You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk and it's it. Money swallowed like sis. Then it perfected the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper than
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 5th part of What If Gohan Joins the Marvel Universe. Smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Battleground Square. While all of Battleground is divided into 128 sections, the square in the middle along with the Coliseum is the only place where no one lives in except for town officials. Unofficially, it's called Section 0. While there are some houses in it, they are near the borders of the square. In the middle along with the large Coliseum are mostly shops. Inside these shops is Human Torch, who eating bag of chips, which looks like flat frogs, but turned to be pretty good. He walking alongside his sister, Sue Richards, who still finds the food a bit gross. Ein telig usis. She's our really god, Johnny tries to say, but has his mouth stuffed with food. Johnny, swallow the food, then talk, complains Sue as they found themselves at the entrance of the Coliseum. Looking up close, this thing pretty big. Yeah, but it big enough to have one fight at a time, so we'll see Ben and the kids fight one after another, comments Johnny as they walk in. The inside of the Coliseum is much larger than what it looked outside. The inside entrance is large room with 8 different pathways. The different paths say 1-16, 17-32, 33-48, 49-64, 65-80, 81-96, 97-112, and 113-128. Why do they have the numbers of the section here? Wonders Johnny as Sue trying to figure it. Is it to tell the people where they should go? Sue asks herself before talking to her brother. Let's go to Ben's section. Coliseum waiting room. Almost every people here from different sections all wait around in a single large room as they take glances at each other. About 138 people are there with Ben Grimm, Scally, Jarek, Date, and Kalra waiting from different ends of the room. The large room has chairs around with the number of the different sections on them with the 16 who won the open tournament standing up. So far, the people that aren't here are Zane and the 3 others. The kid won, right? Ben wonders as he look around for any sign of Zane. Where did he go? He going to be late at this rate. None of these people even look Saiyan, thought Kalra as she scans the area for Zane, and they don't match his power. Could he still be back in his section? Someone who makes my features, thought Scally as he looks around. If that Saiyan is being trained by Old Man Gim, then it might take a while. That old man must really wants to win this year. The door to the waiting room opens as everyone's attention has been drawn to them. Coming inside is a tall young man with peach skin and large green hair as big as his body, wearing a red, gold-striped vest and pants. He looks around the room and spots Kalra as he approaches her. Scally, Date, and Jarek immediately paid attention to this when walks up to Kalra, but suddenly the man bows to her. I'm sorry for my tardiness, Captain. Calmly apologies the man with green hair. I have been doing some last-minute sparring to test my abilities. Don't apologies for that. Just make sure you make it far. The pride of our name is at stake, Godo, commands Kalra as the man. Godo stands up and stands to the left of Kalra like a bodyguard. Is that one of her men? Wonders Scally as he senses Godo's power. He seems strong, but just stronger than Jarek. Could he have some sort of trick? The door opens again, but this time, it's 3 others. The women with the blonde hair and sword, the man with black curly hair, and the man with white hair and purple eyes. Kalra eyed those 3 as Scally takes quick glances at them. The women notice him and waves politely, which startles Scally. Ben sees them as well and is little shocked on how human they looked, more so than a pink Kree. He was about to approach them until the door opens again. Coming in is the man wearing the white cloak. He wearing a different mask this time, covering his right eye instead of his left. The man with the curly hair immediately bowed down to the man. Your Maja. The man interrupts the curly-haired man by gesturing a pauses, before commanding him to stand up. Not here, Girud, commands the white cloak man as man named Girud gets up. You may call me Commander for the time being. Yes, Commander, says Girud bows quickly before standing behind the white cloak. Godo and Kalra watch this exchange, as they see the man showed a good show during the battle royale. Godo is surprised that such a man as Girud have someone behind him. It seems that man with the barriers have such a person above him, Captain, comments Godo, who turns to his captain and sees her making a face he hasn't seen in quite a while. That man, said Kalra as her eyes widen in shock. What is he? That man. questions Gyrid as he looks at the white cloak. Just how powerful is he, Captain? Korla didn't say anything. Gyrid then feels fear coming from inside him, as the last time he'd seen his captain this surprised is when their entire fleet was wiped out by a Herald of Galactus. He just looks at the man, wondering just how powerful is he to make Korla make that face again. On the other side of the room, Scally also senses the white cloak's power and wonders one thing. Is he a monster? Scally questions as even Korla's power pales compared to this man. The door opens once again, as this time it was an official coming in with two large badoon, carrying a large cylinder with a hole on top. It seems almost all competitors are here except for the Section 92s. It seems that a representative from that section came early, getting his number already, announces the official. Korla's first reaction was whispering what, followed by having an angry look as she storms out of the room. Gyrid wanted to stop her, but knew that as long as she in a bad mood, no one should grab her attention. Is she one of the competitors from the Battle Royale? Asks the official as Gyrid nods. Good. Since 16 who won that round gets to participate in the second half only, meaning for this half, they are excluded. That's a relief. Gyrid thought is glad for the convenience. Well, that's a new rule, whispers the blonde woman to her comrades. It seems we can leave here. The women and the man with white hair starts to leave, but not the man in the robes, who stays with his commander. The blonde woman gives him a look before leaving. Soon, almost all of the other 16 competitors start to leave. Now that we almost have all the 128 section competitors here, shall we start the lottery? Says the official as Ben raises his hand. Hey, should we really start without the kid here? Asks Ben. His representative came here drawing a number for a match later. He should arrive by then, informs the official as looks at the winner of Section 1. Let's start from 1 to 128, shall we? The fighter for Section 1 goes up to the machine, which suddenly opens up from the left, revealing a pipe aiming at fighter. It pops out a ball, speeding at the fighter, who is startled a bit, barely catches with his hand. The ball has the number 113 on it. Number 113, so your first match shall take place in the afternoon, says the official as he types something on a device in his wrist. Fighter 2, where are you? Here, says Gyrid as walks forward. The machine then fire a ball at him as he easily catches it. He take a look and sees that his number is 94. Number 94, so your match will take place at noon against number 93. The holder of that number is Dragon of Earth, informs the official. Dragon, thought Scally. Let's continue, shall we? Announces the official. Coliseum Arena. The stands around the station is separated by 8 short walls, but the audience can still see the stands next to them. The way they enter is through door in the middle of each stands. Everybody in the stands has a seat, but it is crowded as most of Battleground is here, which is at about 100,000 people all in a single coliseum. In front of the stands is a large sand brown round floor where the tournament would take place. It is about 20 feet below the stands. The coliseum also has no roof, meaning it's part of the outside. I thought after seeing Stadium that I wouldn't have someone's feet next to me, complains Johnny as the feet that belongs to someone keeps landing on his shoulder. As Johnny turns to the buddy, do you mind? At least the seats are surprisingly comfortable, compliments Sue, who trying to find the bright side. I just wish people won't place their feet next to me when they have to stretch, says Johnny as he moans. Specking of stretch, where's Reed? Who knows? He said he going with Miguel somewhere. Honestly, for once, I wished he go to an alien planet one of these days and somehow relax with each other instead of doing our own thing, says Sue, who wants to spend time with her husband, but he did say he'll come later. I just hope late actually comes. The large door to the arena opens as Delon comes out wearing a blue dress. For almost 1,000 years, this planet has been holding this legendary tournament since the start of the Skull Cree War. Even when several civilizations denounced this tournament hold values of what it means to fight, informs Delon. Now, the time has come for the 992nd tournament to begin. There was some cheers coming until Delon has something else to announce. Now, I have something to announce. The committee has decided to host the second half of the tournament in 6 months' time in the case of the competitors can come up with strategies, invent new attacks, and so on, explains Delon as the people in the stand start to talk. Even so, this tournament can still become the greatest. Now, let's meet the first 16 fighters. Coming out the door are 16 representatives of different sections, who drew a number from 1 to 16. Among them is number 16, Scally, who drew number 9. Scally glances at his opponent, the drawer of number 10, an alien whose form looks like black fog with yellow, but looks humanoid. For those of you who don't know, the area and the Coliseum will spread out but have each individual fights uninterrupted by the other fights, announces Delon. If have chosen to sit at a section for one of the battleground sections, get ready to hold on. What does she mean by hold on? Wonders a nervous Johnny who anticipates something going to happen. Suddenly, the seats the Sue and Johnny are in were torn apart from where they were as they suddenly float up into the air. The Coliseum itself is lifted from the ground, all the way above the stores and hotels of the square as it starts expanding itself. Soon, the Coliseum, which takes up most of the space in the square, was above everything in the square, spreading into the size of the square itself. Each of the seats moved into a section where the audience each individually chosen. Soon Sue and Johnny found themselves next to each other in a different spot along with more room and different people next to them. They see that the arena also expanded, but 3 times larger than what it was. Well, that I didn't see coming, admits Johnny, although he no longer has feet next to him. Well, at least good thing happened. Now, will each competitor go their area for their fight, says Delon as she steps on a plate under her, as it lifts her above the arena. There are about 8 screens on top of the Coliseum. They are spread apart in all directions so that people can get a view of at least one screen in front of them. Each screen then shows a matchup with one person's face is shown along with their opponent. If your face, along with your opponent's face, is showing in one screen, will you head into the direction of that screen? Announces Delon. Everybody did as they were told, as Scally is walking feet away from the left side of his opponent to their place. As everybody reaches their spot, suddenly walls start coming out the floor and the floor, becoming high enough that audience in certain sides can barely see some of the fights over the walls of the fights they can see. The walls ends up creating an oval-shaped ring for each match. There are 8 screens all showing each of the different fights so that the people in the audience can see all the fights, even the ones they can't see. Scally starts stretching his legs as he stares at his opponent who doing nothing but staring at him. Scally looks up at the screen above the section there to see his opponent's name. Leo is the name of the man with pitch black skin and yellow eyes. Scally can't even see if he has a mouth. The matches will begin in about 30 seconds, informs Delon as a countdown starts on the screens. After stretching his arms, Scally tries to figure out where Leo came from. A planet from the other side of the galaxy, or maybe from another universe. Perhaps he from a different dimension. Either way, this is a new competitor from somewhere he doesn't know, and that only makes Scally's blood boiling. He has a big smile on his face as he starts doing squat until 5 seconds are left of the clock. 5, 4, 3, 2, Delon says, counting down the clock. Let's do this, Scally says to himself as he stares at his opponent. 1. Scally, as soon as Delon ended saying 1, places all his power into his right leg and steps off from his place, speeding towards Lil. He tries to do a shoulder tackle, but when he reaches Lil, he missed. Scally is shocked as Lil suddenly disappears, but realizes that Lil's legs were still on the ground where he was. Scally then looks up to see that Lil is at least 15 feet above the air as he stretches his legs to the air. Scally is between Lil's legs as Lil retracts himself as he uses his bottom to attack Scally and slams him into the ground. Did he just turn down for what him? Says Johnny watching the fight in shock. Leo then grabs Scally from the ground with his hands. He then presses Scally up in the air and starts spinning him around. As Leo's arms start extending, a rush of wind is created from Leo's spinning. Planning on slamming Scally to the ground, pulls his arms above him, but was interrupted when Scally recovers and grabs Leo's arms and starts flying up to the air. He drags Leo up with him, and Scally, after reaching a good distance in the air, starts descending back down as he slams Leo to ground. That's called payback, yells Scally as he flying above dust. Suddenly, 4 black lines came out of the smoke, revealing to be Leo's right arm, splitting into 4 pieces. They came at Scally at a high speed, as Scally, who wasn't anticipating that, ends up getting his legs and arms captured by them as they retract back to Leo. Scally came speeding towards Leo as Leo then punches Scally in his stomach with his other arm. Leo thought he won when Scally lowers his head, believing that Scally is knocked out. Scally reveals his face, looking like that it didn't even faze him. He then quickly powers his way out of Leo's hold on his arms, then punches Leo's left arm with both hands, each of the punches on the different side of the arm. Scally follows that up by head-butting Leo in the face. Leo steps back, letting go of Scally's legs, as Scally then high kicks Leo, causing Leo to be sent flying up in the air. Scally follows that up by chasing after Leo, punching in the left side, sending him flying before chasing after him and kicking him. Scally repeats the process as Leo is going all over the place as Scally keeps chasing after him and attacking him. As Scally heel kicks Leo towards the floor, Scally finishes his combo by chasing after Leo and landing a large blow in the stomach, as Liu crashes to the floor. As expected, Scally won't lose to the likes of newcomer. One of the audience comments, "That to be expected, he is a huge favorite." Informs another he has at least more than 15% of the bets, most of them from the upper sections. Johnny looks around to see that most of the eyes are glued to Scally's match more than others. Much of them are rooting for him too. "It looks like that is a huge deal here," comments Johnny. "I know. I heard that this guy was in the lowest section before fighting his way up to the point where they offer him a place to live if he fights for them," Sue says as she overheard some of the people around them. "I was surprised by what you can do." Compliments Scally on his down opponent, but it looks like our fun time is over. Suddenly, two fists came out of the dusty crater, coming towards Scally. Scally backs away, then grabs both fists with his hands. Liu slingshot himself at Scally, head-butting him in the face. Liu thought he got Scally as Scally starts stumbling backwards as he lets go of Liu. But a small smile appears on Scally's face as he rushes towards Liu and punches him in the face, sending him straight forward as he lands and rolls around the floor. "That was rude, hitting me suddenly like that," complains Scally, but still smiling. "But at least we'll have some fun for a while." "Shut up," yells Liu as he punches the air ahead of Scally as it starts stretching at Scally. Scally prepares to block it, but it suddenly turns to the right and goes around behind Scally. It aims behind Scally, but Scally's reflexes allows him to react quickly as he turns around and stops Liu's fist with his right foot. But coming from behind is Liu as he springs himself at Scally. Unfortunately for him, Scally senses this and uses Liu's own right fist as leverage and back flips around Liu as Liu crashes into his own fist. Liu manages to still stand, but Scally grabs Liu from his waist and flies the two of them up into the air. Before Liu can even react, Scally turns themselves over with their heads facing the ground. Scally speeds towards the ground and tosses Liu into the ground as Scally lands on his yards away from Liu. "You can separate your arms and stretch your arms just like that. What can't you do?" asks Scally as Liu starts get up, glaring at Scally. "I said shut up," harshly yells Liu as he raises his arms. He then punches through the ground as most of his arm is dug deep underground. Suddenly, Scally senses something from below as he backs away quickly as one of Liu's fists came out of the ground. "What the?" yells a surprised Scally as the fist retreats back to the ground. The fist came out from behind Scally, hitting in the back of head before retreating. Scally recovers as starts dodging the fist as it keeps coming out and back into the ground at a rapid speed. Scally then sees that Liu is defenseless now as he rushes at Liu at a speed where the fist can't catch him. Suddenly, the other fist came out before Scally can even touch him, almost hitting by a couple of millimeters as Scally can feel the wind from the force of the punch. So before, he was using only one fist. Guesses Scally, "I should have looked at the hands more clearly." Scally's guess was right as the speed of the fists coming out of the ground doubled, indicating that Liu is using both arms. Scally can tell that Liu is using everything he has on this, as so far, Scally is dodging all of Liu's attacks. Scally sees that the speed of the fists coming out the ground is starting to slow down, causing Scally to smirk, knowing Liu's stamina is draining. As the speed drops by half, Scally flies to the air and starts charging Kai into his right hand. He fires randomly around Liu as Liu is shocked that Scally can do that. He can fire energy out of him, Liu thought to himself, while dust and smoke starts to cover their area up. But then, Liu then realizes something. "Now that I think about it, he dodging my fists at such a fast speed, but doesn't seem to be tried. Does this mean he been holding back?" The smoke reaches its maximum reach as Scally enters the smoke, feet away from Liu. He then unleashes a powerful kick upward, sending Liu out of the smoke. Liu turns his head below to see a faint light coming from inside the smoke. The smoke starts gathering around the light grew brighter. As Liu lands to ground, the smoke clears enough to see that it was Scally, powering his beam magnum. "Don't worry," Scally calls out as the big sphere of energy on his finger starts spinning. "If I wanted to kill you, I could have done it earlier. But since we can't kill each other, I made sure that this only had enough to take you down." Liu quickly backsteps away from Scally, but stops when his back hits the wall. He watches Scally's attack as prepares to dodge it, as that it his only option for this. Scally aims his attack at Liu as he has an idea on what Liu going to do. With his attack reaching the size of a yoga ball, Scally fires his attack. The attack comes straight at Liu, but starts to slow down a bit, allowing Liu a chance to dodge. He uses his legs like a spring and jumps away to left, getting out of the path of the beam magnum. "Got you," yells Scally as he faces his hands at his attack. Suddenly, the energy of the beam magnum stops in place as Scally directs it to the left at Liu. The attacks hits Liu like a cannon as well, exploding a bit as Liu gets knocked away, fainting from his injuries. A small pod with big blue eye came to Liu as it starts analyzing him. It glows red, telling everybody the Liu is knocked out. The match between Scally and Liu is over first, announces Delon, winner Scally. A sound of applause came in, but really loud as Scally thought, due to people still watching the other matches. A couple of people start leaving, as they came to watch what kind of condition is Scally in, as they are now assured of Scally's chances. Some of them are gamblers betting on Scally. Either way, Scally took a bow as an entrance on his side of the arena opens, as medics Acme and for Liu as Scally leaves the arena. Coliseum main lobby. Since the Coliseum increased in size, the lobby of a Coliseum is much more bigger. It was a bit empty as the fights are already underway. Standing to the wall where the hallways to the seats are in, Kalra just waits as she senses Scally winning his fight. He could tell it was him, and while his opponent would make a good match with a couple of her men, that person was beneath him. So far, the only person that can match her is Scally if he has a plan, and the two people from the Battle Royale. She believed the Rock Man, the Thing, could match her in strength. He might be stronger physically. Suddenly, she senses somebody outside. Someone with above normal power. She remembers it as gets off the wall as she senses two people actually flying up the Coliseum. They land outside the entrance as they walk inside. Coming inside is an old blue Cree and a young man with black spiky hair. He wearing black training pants and a red sleeveless shirt with a white mask. Dragon, said someone coming from behind feet away from Kalra. Kalra turns to see Reed Richards approaching Zane. Are you okay? Asks Reed with concern. Everything is okay, assures Zane as Reed look at his outfit. What happened to you clothes? Wonders Reed. They were torn apart during some training as well as my preliminary round. Answers Zane with a bit of embarrassment, but I'll get it fixed when we get back, Mr. Richards. Dragon, Kalra calls out to Zane as Zane looks at her with a bit of surprise when he sees her features. I've been waiting for you. Coliseum main lobby. When Zane first spot the woman known as Kalra, his first thought goes like this. Who the hell is she? He then examines her, from the red long coat she wears to her face, which looks like it from a cold woman. He felt a bit intimidated from her ice-cold stare. Even so, he holds his ground. As she starts approaching her, he can barely hear her footsteps, as if she can move from one end of the room to the another without nobody noticing. When Zane tries to sense her power, he is surprised that his feels really low compared to the atmosphere she emitting. She stops about 3 feet from him as they look at each other in each other's eyes. Zane can feel he's being judged as she looks at him from top to bottom. For some reason, she looks disappointed. Are you really a Saiyan? Questions coldly Kalra. Saiyan, wonders Zane as his conversation with Gim comes back to him, as he answers with no confidence, I think so. You think so? Questions again Kalra as she sighs. Don't tell me you forgot as well. Forgot as well, wonders Zane as Reed Rickards whispers to his ear. It seems the other Saiyan lost his memories as well. Whispers Reed, or maybe you two were too young to remember. Reed stops whispering as he confronts Korla. I believe young dragon here is a Saiyan. Says Reed as he continues, his features are similar to you and I believe he grows stronger after a battle. HMPH, then it seems that you really might a Saiyan. Kalra somewhat comments, as she stares a bit more coldly at Zane. But, it seems you're even weaker than my little brother, who's now the second strongest Saiyan by default. It took Reed about 2 seconds before what Kalra said hits him. It took 0.3 seconds to get picture on who it is. Gim figure it out a bit longer as the two just widen their eyes at this revelation. That the person who Kalra fought, the person whose friends she hurt, the one who Kalra could have killed, Scally, is her brother. Zane, on the other hand, just raises his eyebrow as he turns to Reed in confusion and guidance on what she means. Hey Mr. Richards, what is she talking about? Wonders Zane as Reed ignores him and turns to Kalra. You attacked your own brother? Questions Reed, as can't understand why would someone attack a known family member for no reason. I don't know what you people consider about your own family, but us Saiyans couldn't care less of those around us. Coldly says Kalra, if our own mother is weak, then we won't bat her an eye if she's killed. What? Yells Zane in sudden anger as power starts unconsciously rising. That's your own mother. Why would you care about such stupid feelings? Asks Kalra as her tone is like she doesn't understand why he's angry. You shut up. Yells Zane in rage as he thought his own mother, who adopted him, and to his knowledge, could have adopted him when he came to Earth, as if you understand. Kalra then had a thought on her head as she smirks and stares at Zane. I see. I didn't think you'd be this weak-minded. Weak-minded? Questions an insulted Zane. What's wrong with thinking it's great to have a family? Why am I wasting time with you? Said Kalra as she probably talking to herself more than talking with Zane. You don't know anything and you're weak. Even my little brother is more impressive than you. What a waste. Kalra just walks away, leaving Zayn dumbfounded. She came to him, wanting to meeting him, and now she just left it a bad note. He turns to Reed, who really doesn't know what to say. Gim just sighs as he turns to Zayn. Your match is up next, announces Gim as he thought of something. And your opponent is that women's lieutenant. Lieutenant? Questions Zayn as he thought of Kalra in some sort of military outfit, which suits her a bit. I heard that she's a pirate, explains Gim. Until recently, as it seems she and her crew became a mercenaries for hire until they came here. Just then, Reed had a thought about Kalra and why she came here. Judging by a couple of her actions, it seems that she was actively looking for Dragon and the other Saiyan. Thought Reed as he notices something about the nature of Saiyans. She came here probably to fight, but it sounds like she guessed one of them might be here in a fighting competition, and that fact that she knows more about the nature of a Saiyan means. Reed just stops there as he felt that he was reading too much of it. So I'm fighting her lieutenant, said Zayn, mostly to himself as he smiles. Then how about I take some of my frustration and beat her lieutenant? It was Reed's imagination, but for a second, Zayn's tone sounded like Kalra from just now, and scally when he refused to let Kalra go from Battleground. It sounds arrogant. Battleground, waiting room. Most of the competitors for the next round are here, including among the bunch is Gato, who wearing a blue sleeveless body armor. While Gato can be considered strong, the one everybody has their eye on is one of the favorite, Date. Gato heard stories of Date as despite having only one arm, he won the tournament twice a few years ago. In the last tournament, he made it up to the best four, before losing to the would-be champion. There are a few people in Battleground who knows why Date only has one arm. The only thing most people know about that is that after Date lost his arm, he abandoned the Skrull Empire before the homeworld was destroyed by Galactus. It is said that fought as a hitman before he grew tired of it and settled in Battleground. Because he had a moral and somewhat honorable code, his hits usually consist of corrupt individuals, many of whom either have strong bodyguards or are just strong themselves. Emerging from the entrance to the arena is Scally, who has a few bruises on him, but they don't seem to bother him that much. When Scally spots Date, he smiles and walks over to him in a friendly demeanor. Hey, so your match is up next, says Scally, striking up a conversation. Who is it with? Him, answers Date as he nudges his head at a huge bald gray alien with an halberd. You'd take him down, says Scally, confident in Date's victory. Of course, I'm determined to take back that honor, said Date, making his statement sound like a fact. Well, I going to be in your way, so it not going to be easy, smirks Scally as Date lets out a small smile. It seems you're just as confident as ever. Perhaps defeating an opponent weaker than might had swelled up your head, Date says with sarcasm. Hey, Scally said, insulted. Again, you have always been like that since you were a hatchling. You were such trouble, going around how you will one day defeat the World Eater and his heralds. Jokes Date. I still can, yells an annoyed Scally. I even remember you trying to get Gim to train you, only for him to turn you away. Remembers Date, you tries to fight him, only for you to lose in seconds. He only started training me after his son left the planet. Thought Scally of Gim's son, a man he only heard of from Gim during the time Gim trained Scally. The door to waiting room opens, as coming inside is Zayn, who looks frustrated due to his encounter with Kalra. He looks around the room to the other competitors as one of the officials came up to him. Are you Dragon of Earth? Asks an official, which captures Zayn's attention. Why yes, that's right. Zayn identifies himself. Are you prepared? Asks an official as Zayn nods in confirmation. Good, here is how the tournament matches go. The official explains how will matches go for today. At least 16 competitors still starts in the same arena. The arena will separates into 8 separate rings shaped like a pie, where everyone will fight their chosen opponent. As the number of section competitors slice in half, the next round will have the arena separated into 4 parts where the remaining 64 will fight. This continues for the round 3 where the arena becomes whole as the remaining 32 will fight in separate battles, until there is 16. Those 16 will fight the 16 from the Battle Royale in the main Battleground tournament in a year after the gates to the outside world of the planet has been open, allowing the fighters inside Battleground to train. After the gates are closed in a year, the remaining 32 will fight to be the top of Battleground. Excuse me, Zayn says, raising his hand like he's at school. I have a question. What is it? Why do we have to wait an entire year today to finish the tournament? Asks a dumbfounded Zayn. Shouldn't we just finish it the next day? It's been a tradition since the days of Kshan, explains the official, ever since governments across the galaxy pulled out of it. Kshan decided to let the remaining competitors to take a year off to train before the tournament resumes. They say that Kshan trains outside Battleground for a whole year before returning to fight. So it's like continuing what he did out of respect, right? guesses Zane as the official agrees. More or less, but it's something the higher-ups like to enforce for tradition's sake, answers the official. As Zane talks to the official about what you can and cannot do, Scally and Date look at him as they never seen him before in the meeting before the first match. It took a while to guess that out of all the 128 competitors, only Section 92, Gim's section, didn't have their guy in the meeting back then. It leads them to correctly guess that Zane is Section 92's representative. Is he really Gim's man for this fight? Thought Scally as he reads Zane's power. He's weak, but he's probably just suppressing his energy. What made me think he's weak is the atmosphere around him. He doesn't scream strong. Meanwhile, Godo watches Zane from a distance as he knew that Zane is his opponent since Zane wasn't here before. His hair started moving on his own as he thought of what strategies to use. For some reason, his eyes stare at both Scally and Zane, as they both look like his captain, more so for Scally. A competitor came from the entrance of the arena, meaning that another match has finished. After talking to Date, Scally leaves the room as competitors wait for their fight. Coliseum Arena. Reed is looking for his wife and brother-in-law in the now huge row of seats. He's interested in how they managed to increase the size of an entire arena, but he already had a good idea. He spots them and sees his wife, looking she's enjoying herself, and Johnny, who's in the next row over, flirting with someone. Sue spots her husband as he comes towards her. Reed, Sue calls out to, "Where have you been? Miguel has been asking me for advice on something they found." Reed answers, not wanting to say more until a new development happens. "What kind of advice?" asks Sue. "About a certain discovery. They want to solve it on their own," Reed says, as Sue knew he's hiding something, but decides not to say more as she knew he had a good reason for hiding something. Now, the first batch of matches has finished with the winners of them up of the screens, announces Delon from a tile that hovering over the arena as the 8 screens shows the first 8 winners, with Scally being the first one due to finishing first. Let introduce the next contestants. Appearing out of huge doors leading from the waiting room, the next 8 contestants, consisting of Zane, Godo, Date, and 5 others. Zane looks at the screen to see the various face-offs and sees the screen with him and Godo. Zane takes a giant leap towards where he's fighting as the moment he lands. He starts doing stretching exercises as the crowd roars from the tension building up. Godo stretches his arm, but after that he starts whip his long green hair around as Zane just looks at him, bewildered. Who is he? Jaden Smith. Zane jokes to himself, still, that hair color is weird. But then again, I'm in space and an alien as well, so shouldn't think stuff like that here. It seems that my captain is interested in you, Dragon. Godo tells Zane from a distance as Zane turns to him. My name not really Dragon, but whatever. Thought Zane as he responds to Godo, is your captain the woman with the tail? Because she called me weak like a half an hour ago. Really? Said a surprised Godo, I didn't know. My captain tends to keep things to herself. She looks like that sort of person. Agrees Zane as Godo laughs. That what I thought when I first met her, after she took over that crew. Explains Godo as Zane starts to think that Godo is nice person for a pirate, mercenary. He seems sociable. Thought Zane as he senses Godo power level, but his power seems weaker than me. If that's the case, how come he gets away with being weak? Everybody is in place. Raise the walls, announces Delon as the walls that separates the competitors from everyone but their opponent rises. Let the fights begin. Zane starts head first by speeding at Godo and tries to deliver a solid punch at his face. Godo reacts by blocking his attack using both his hands, which surprises Zane as he didn't think he was this strong. With a smirk on his face, Godo goes for a sweep kick on Zane's legs, but Zane reacts by jumping, causing Godo to miss. Zane, while in the air, goes for a stomp kick at Godo's upper torso. Godo rolls out of the way, but quickly grabs Zane's legs after Zane misses. Godo kicks up back to his feet while trying to push Zane into the ground. It would have worked, but Zane starts levitating using his kai to stop his fall. With a smirk on his face, Godo starts spinning Zane by his legs and tries to slam Zane into the ground. Zane uses his arms to block his head, preparing for damage as Godo slams Zane into the ground. Bits and pieces of the floor fly off as Zane, still conscious, starts flying up into the air as Godo lets him go, with Godo having an advantage over Zane initially. Damn, he's good. Thought Zane as Godo has the edge over him in close combat. I forgot. Just because he doesn't have kai, doesn't mean he's weak. I shouldn't rely on my kai sense to measure someone's strength. Zane finds himself in a bad start, but he still has a couple of tricks up his sleeve. The fact that Godo can't use kai means he probably can't sense him. Zane also smiles from the fact that Godo can't fly, otherwise he would have continued the attack in the air. Zane decides to use his flight to his advantage, seeing as this not like Battle Royale. Seemingly going for the offense, Zane charges, then fires rapid Kai Blast from both his hands and fires them at Godo. Godo starts dodging as all the Kai Blast miss him. Meanwhile, on the stands, 3 people are watching this match unfold. Lendu near the west gate, Beyond across from him, but far from the east gate, and Creed, watching in the middle of the north and west gate. They knew what Zane is planning, as he done it before. A cloud of dust created from his blast against the floor. Against people who can't sense him or have heightened senses, it's the best tactic that gives him unlimited possibilities. With Godo now covered by the cloud of dust, Zane senses where he is as speeds towards Godo, ready to deliver a strong flying kick. It landed, but not on a body. Zane felt like his right foot hit a hard wall as it injures Zane's right foot from the impact. What is this? A wall. Barrier, thought Zane, trying to get what Godo's defense feels like. Suddenly, the wall starts moving as it grabs Zane's right leg, then pulls Zane over Godo at a high speed. Zane's right side is slammed against the hard floor as Zane's right side is damaged. Whatever is grabbing Zane starts to pull him overhead again. But Zane counters by firing Kai Blast at Godo, as the thing that grabbed Zane retreats back to Godo. Zane gets up and backs away from Godo as the dust finally clears. During that time, Date had already won his match. 2 minutes earlier, when the match between Date and his opponent started, the Fantastic Four watched Zane's match at first. It to be expected as they knew Zane more than the other contestants. If Ben were there, they would focus a bit more on him than Zane, but would still look after Zane due to his youth. It would take something unexpected for them to take their attention away, something that Date did. Date's opponent name is Pale and he is wearing some durable looking armor as it covers everything but his head. This can be an advantage for Pale as they will focus on his head, which is what he's expecting as this allows him to counterattack easily. While the uses of weapons can be allowed, they are not allowed to kill, which is usually why energy-based weapons are set to stun or hurt, while normal weapons have to be blunt. But this is not an enforced rule, so people who are confident in their skills in aiming can enter with weapons that could kill. However, if a combatant is to kill another combatant, the offender is kicked off the tournament for the rest of their life. This is another reason why many governments across the galaxy stopped entering, as assassins can enter to kill the strongest Solider in certain races' army. As soon as the next set of matches began, Pale rushes at Date, using his halberd as he starts thrusting the end at Date. Pale trained himself with the halberd really well as the weight doesn't affect him as bad as when he first held it. Even with the honed skills with the halberd, Date just dodges all of the thrusts, watching and predicting where they're gonna land. Suddenly, the halberd starts glowing as Pale backs away, and delivers a strong vertical swing from a distance at Date. This surprised Date as a vertical line of ionic energy came out of the halberd as the energy ends up hitting Date. Energy that didn't hit Date ended up traveling over to the crowd. Sue Richards noticed this and was about to create a force field, but another one was created around the crowd. This was part of the arena's defensive system. If any attack were to hit the crowd, the defense system, the force field, will defend them. Sue and Reed look at where the energy slice came from as they see the cloud of dust around Date. As Date reappears from the cloud, his body is made of rock, just like the thing. Is that? Questions Sue as she looks at Date. So he really was a super Skrull, thought Reed as he guessed that was the case since he first saw Date using fire to fly. Upon seeing Date unharmed, using the powers of the thing, Pale starts charging at him, as his new form might slow him down. It turns out Pale was right as Date had trouble dodging Pale. But it didn't matter as Date durability makes up for that. Pale then lifts his halberd over his head and, using all his power, tries to strike down Date's durability. Date felt that it could have worked, as he changes back to his original form. However, Pale attack is too fast for even Date's natural speed. Pale could have won if Date wasn't using another superhuman's power. Suddenly, in front of Pale's eyes, Date disappears as a rush of wind is what remains. What? Thought a shocked Pale as his halberd lands on the ground. Suddenly, Pale is hit in the back by something incredibly hit and heavy. It felt like it melted through the armor before hitting his skin. Pale is sent off the ground and lands straight across to the wall. As he lands from the wall to the ground, he takes a look at Date, whose one arm is both rock and on fire. That's Johnny's powers as well, says a surprised Sue, but is more shocked from the last powers he displayed. Read, the power he used before. It looked he teleported, but it wasn't it? He was fast, said Reed as he understood what powers Date just used, speed. It was probably Quicksilver's powers, and he combined Ben's and Johnny's as well. So this guy really is a super Skrull, said Sue as she calms down, and he has Quicksilver's powers as well. He probably gained them when Petro Maximoff was captured when the Skrull Kree War came to Earth. Guesses Reed, there seems to be more super Skrulls than I thought. Maybe I need to tell the others about this. Dates turns the powers off as his hand goes back to its regular form. Pale gets back up, but looks really injured in the back of his torso. Using Quicksilver's speed as well as turning his knuckles into rock, Date rapidly punches Pale in the front torso about 20 times in 3 or 4 seconds, causing Pale to walk backwards as he holds his stomach. Using his natural physiological, Date stretches his hand back and delivers a heavy blow to the face to Pale. And with that, Pale finally falls to the ground. Date raises his hands in victory as the blue-eyed pod came in and scans Pale. It glows red, confirming Pale is knocked out. The roar cheers can be heard around the arena, telling how big of a favorite is Date. As Delon announces Date's win, Reed and Sue realizes that Zane is still fighting. From what they see, Zane is backing away from a cloud of dust and dirt. The dust finally clears, revealing Godo, who's surrounded by a green shield, covering him. They then realizes that it wasn't a shield, but Godo's long hair. What? Says a shocked Zane as Godo's hair returned back its original size. I can control my hair as you can see, explains Godo. Besides, it's not really weird, considering you're flying without some type of flight unit, and fire energy out of your hands. That's true, agrees Zane. How tries to remain calm. But what can I do now? Zane's brain tries to think of anything possible way to defeat Godo now. He has to be cautious now that Godo's hair now counts as a weapon and a shield. If he gets too close, his hair will to grab or attack him. Even if he dodges the hair and goes for Godo at close range, Godo will either counterattack and possibly beat Zane at close range or defend himself with his hair, then attack Zane with his hair. Even if he uses his Kai Blast, Godo can just defend himself with his hair. As for the aura displacement technique that Gim taught him, Zane had yet to master it. It's a difficult technique to use as Zane had just learned the basics and can't do it at the same extent as Gim. He can only use it in one small spot anywhere around his body, meaning he has to guess where the attack is going to land and time it correctly to deflect it. Zane is fortunate that Godo seems to not use anything energy-based, because that's aura displacement's weakness. It can't block anything plasma-based or energy-based. Zane sighs as he didn't expect it use this technique right now in his first round. He learned this technique from a book Wong, Doctor Strange's apprentice and servant gave him. It came from a legend about a man who was raised a dragon in order to become a king of all the world. The legend might not be true, but it doesn't change the fact that it helps Zane get strong. Now that warm-up is over, Zane increases the distance between him and Godo as he puts his S on his knees and crouches. Deo no, Zane was about to say, before stopping. Screw it, I'm saying it in English because I'm pretty sure I'm saying it wrong. Thought Zane before continuing. Strength of the Great King. First fist. Rise. Suddenly, Zane's body gets little redder as his blood starts pumping a lot more over his body. His muscles start expanding, that he could pass up as a college linebacker if it weren't for his young-looking face. With his full physical strength reached, Zane prepares to battle Godo to his fullest. Coliseum stands. He's seeing Zane not even landing a hit on Godo, whose defense, which involves manipulating his long green hair to cover himself, is invincible to Zane, as well as his combat skills, which even Zane is having trouble countering. He sees Zane floating away from Godo as he squats and starts gaining muscle from a certain technique. As soon as Zane's power increased, the man in the white robe walks away with one thought on his mind. And now, it's over. Just like back then. Coliseum Arena. Zane's white skin turns red, which is a side effect from increasing his blood flow, along with his muscle mass expanding. His aura is more viable as the whole stadium can see the flowing white aura, flaring wildly around him as the bottom of his hair looks like it was floating on water. What is this? He looks a little bigger in his skin. Godo was thinking, but stopped as Zane suddenly shot a Kai at Godo. Godo blocks it with his hair by sweeping it aside. However, Zane flies straight above Godo and fires a beam at him. It looked more powerful than a normal Kai blast, so Godo creates a big shield made from his hair above him as it blocks Zane's beam attack. But by the time Godo created the shield, Zane speeds towards the left side, without Godo noticing, as he attacks after Godo stopped his beam attack. A furious hard right to Godo's side causes Godo to stumble to the left. Then Zane headbutts Godo, then follow that up with a point-blank Kai blast. It blasts Godo out of his feet, but recovers by using his hair to create 4 legs on his back and uses them to push himself at Zane, who was unprepared as Godo lands a strong blow with his right fist on Zane's stomach. Godo then feels his fist sinking into Zane's stomach as he looks up at Zane's face, which is smiling as he doesn't even look fazed by Godo's punch. Zane grabs Godo's right arm, twists it as he places himself under Godo's arm, and judo flips him into the air as he then flies straight after Godo. Godo opens his eyes and sees Zane flying right at him as he counters by using his hair to attack Zane in midair. Zane dodges it and zips-zags around to keep Godo from predicting his movements. Unfortunately, Godo is keeping up with Zane's new speed and prepares to attack with a massive attack with his hair, only for inertia to take its form as Godo realizes that he stops flying and started falling. This messed up his timing, as his attack misses as Zane dives and kicks Godo again, causing him to ascend again to the air. Godo couldn't see where he was as he sees nothing but the stands as Zane chases after him and punches him in the stomach, causing Godo flying straight in the air. Zane repeats and repeats as the crowd sees as Godo flying around the air as Zane chases and hits over and over. This ends as Zane kick him straight above him, then chases after him again, only to heel kick him to the ground. Godo crashes into the ground, creating a small crater with him in it. Even though he's down, Zane knew that he wasn't down as he concentrates his Kai into his right foot as the pod came in and scans Godo as it glows green, confirming that he can still fight. As he starts to get back up, Zane breathes in and breathes out as he prepares to finish this fight. The moment Godo puts one knee in the air, Zane flies straight towards him from the sky as he remembers something from his science class before he left to Battleground. Days earlier, in Midtown High School, Peter Parker is teaching his class about physics, as he talks about how theories in physics changes with the birth of superhumans. He then talked about how things remain at his right hand, instead of at his book or the board. The trip is in a few days, and yet I haven't completed my spirit punch, thought a failed-sounding Zane as he grasps his right hand. Not only that, it takes too much time and even the Abomination could have defended himself if he wasn't prepared. But full-powered is impossible, meaning my best attack isn't going to me help much in a fight. Peter sighs as he looks at Alex, who's next to Zane, and clasps his hands together softly as he signals Alex to the same in front of Zane. Alex smiles, then clasps next to Zane's ear, which startles him as the class snickers. Sorry Zane, but you should be paying attention. Apologies Peter before continuing his lesson. Zane looks at the board instead of his book, not even knowing the page the class is on. The board talks about Newton's second law and how force equals mass and acceleration. Zane looks at this and thought about how this applies to fighting. He next had a thought how he can make a move with this law, but couldn't as he can't increase his mass, nor can he come up with a way to be faster without lowering the weight of his attacks. Now, let's talk about how this work with gravity, says Mr. Parker as Zane had another thought and smiles. Now, as he diving, using his Kai and gravity to increase his acceleration, Zane, mid-dive, rolls himself into a ball as he turns his body so his legs face Godo, sticks his right leg out as he empowers his right foot with Kai as he hits Godo with a powerful and brutal dive kick. Zane had a couple of ideas for a name to this attack, but chooses the name of an attack from an anime that Alex, an avid anime fan, made him watched, feeling like he would enjoy it. Zane enjoyed it and liked the main character so much that he decided to name this move the same name as the main character's signature move, Inazuma Kick. While Zane didn't say the move, out of fear that Godo might hear it and somehow avoid or counter it because it was just a fast and empowered dive kick, and said in his head, as his kick practically stepped on Godo's stomach, Zane regrets not saying as Godo, upon impact from the Inazuma Kick, flops across the floor. The impact at the kick made a sound as a pod immediately comes to Godo's side and scans his seemingly broken body. Zane breathes in and he feels he won this fight. He smiles and senses Kalra, who was watching from the front stands, standing immediately after Godo went down to the ground. Zane smirks at her as he defeated her lieutenant, but stops as he sees her more closely, with her arms crossed and with a deadly smile on her face. He turns around to the screen and sees that Godo's condition is green. He turns his head to the down Godo, who effortless gets up and smiles at Zane. Surprised, says Godo to Zane, who's in disbelief. Suddenly, Zane's skin turns back to normal, as Zane couldn't waste more strain to his body. Damn, thought Zane as he angrily looks at Godo and tries to think of a plan. The crowd as well couldn't believe that Godo stood up after that. There were whispers around the arena as Godo dusted himself off. The injury on Gao's body is still there in the form of a blackened bruise. Reed stares at the injury and deducts that Godo should have at least suffered from internal damage as well. While he felt that Zane's attack was too much, in hindsight now, Zane might have to do more now. Meanwhile, Scally, who came along after his talk with Date earlier, looks at Godo then Kalra. It's no surprise seeing as it's a subordinate she chosen, thought Scally before looking at Zane. At his current power, I doubt he can defeat him immediately. In fact, I say he has a small chance of winning. In that case, yells Zane as he charges straight at Godo. Godo, instead of looking like he's trying to counter, ended up penetrating the ground with his hair, confusing Zane. Expecting for Godo's hair to come up from the ground to attack, Zane started sidestepping around in order to avoid the attack. What happened instead was this huge wall of Goto's hair surrounding Zayn, as the ends quickly grabs his legs and arms, lift him into the air, and starts pulling on his limbs. "Arog!" screams Zayn as Goto pulls on his limbs. "Say you give up and I'll let go," announces Goto. "FHCKU," shouts Zayn as he grabs the hair that pulling him and pulls them to lessen the pressure. As the hair loosened thanks to Zayn pulling it, he flies to the sky as Goto tries to pull him to the ground. It works as Zayn is being pulled to ground, but quickly send a Kai blast at Goto, who dodges, but loses his focus on his powers as Zayn gets the hair off of him and fires in a barrage Kai blasts at Goto. While that did create a cloud of dust surrounding Goto, as creates some distance in the air, Goto's hair starts swinging like a helicopter, dispersing the dust and dirt. It then starts chasing after Zayn, as Zayn speeds away from the tentacle-like strands of hair. Zayn would take the opportunity to fire Kai Blast every chance he gets at Goto, but Goto dodges them. Trying to think of a plan in the heat of the moment, Zayn thought of using something to cut the hair. Smiling, Zayn descends towards the ground head first, but launches a Kai Blast at the ground, to the right, to both break his fall and to keep moving. He stops when he felt he had a good enough distance from the chasing attack of Goto's, and puts his right fist into his left hand, charging everything he has into his right fist as fast as he can. The moment Goto's hair barely reaches him, Zayn unleashes his spirit sword technique, as a white blade appears out of Zayn's right arm and cuts the hair of Goto's. "Did he just pull a sword out of his ass?" comments Johnny as Reed also looks surprised. "It probably have something to do with Kai," says Reed, who's wondering something else, but I doubt Iron Fist couldn't even do that. Maybe Kai in his world and our world is different. Reed wants to look more into this, as well as study more of the multicolored storm cloud in space, where Zayn and the other Saiyans came from. In the back of Reed's head, he's been thinking about the possible ways how one can cross other universes. While Reed is drawing a blank so far, he notices something special about Zayn than the other Saiyans when it comes to the abnormality in space. The energy that created it is still part of Zayn. For the sake of keeping things simpler, Reed decides to call the energy that created the abnormality and transporting the Saiyans here, dimensional energy. Like as if he was going through a jungle filled vines, Zayn cuts down hair after hair as most of the eyes pointed at Zayn's fight. Johnny Storm admittedly glad that Zayn didn't make a lame haircut joke as Zayn extends the sword and aims at the top of Goto's head. Goto knew what Zayn is planning and ducks before Zayn could attack. Unfortunately, most of Goto's hair gets cut up as Zayn retraces his attack back his fist and uses the leftover energy to fire a low-level spirit blast at Goto. Goto takes the attack head-on, but emerges out of the blast almost unscathed. But Zayn, who fired the beam in front of Goto, is gone from Goto's sight. Goto realizes that Zayn was in fact behind him and he was right as Goto turns around just in time to block one of Zayn's punches. A straight-up exchange of fists and kicks between Zayn and Goto occurs with Zayn aiming at Goto's core, which is still affected by Zayn's Inazuma kick. Despite that, however, Zayn finds himself being pushed back as Goto nails him with a high kick to Zayn's right hip. However, Zayn grabs Goto's leg upon impact, but Goto quickly attacks with his hair, forcing Zayn to retreat. Goto separates his hair into 7 different strands aiming at Zayn, who stops and crotch, putting his hands of his knees. He using that move he used before, thought Goto as he pushes forward with his attack. The 7 strands of hair separate go off in different direction, with one coming straight at Zayn. The plan for Goto is stop Zayn from using the first fist by forcing Zayn to stop in order to dodge the first strand, so the others can get him. Goto knew that Zayn wasn't fast enough to dodge all of them coming at once in his normal form, so he need to stop Zayn now. Suddenly, Goto faintly sees the aura of Zayn surrounding him like a ball. Goto knew that Zayn must doing something that will be bad, but is forced to continue the attack, to quickly end this battle before Zayn gets a second wind. Suddenly, before the first tentacle-like hair can even reach him, Zayn's aura explodes into one side, reaching the large strand, and deflects it. Zayn's skin turns mildly red as the first fist is activated. Goto watches Zayn speeds past Goto's attack, reaching the minimum speed to dodge the remaining 6, reaching Goto himself. With sudden, furious kick that Goto manages to block, Zayn headhunter Goto with power, stunning Goto long enough for Zayn to uppercut at Goto's stomach. The pain from the Inazuma kick multiples, as Goto counterattack by a punch to the side of Zayn's head. It rattles Zayn's brain, as Goto follows that up with a shift kick to the right leg, making Zayn lose his balance. Before Goto's grabs Zayn with his retracting hair, and spins him around before slamming Zayn into the ground. Goto lifts Zayn into the air again, but Zayn manages to his free hands to fire a Kai blast at Goto, who dodges it. Zayn can feel the first fist wearing off, meaning he has a few seconds to do as much damage as he can to Gado or he'll fight a losing battle next. Gado swings Zayn again to the ground again, but Zayn fire a Kai wave on the ground before impact as he launches him to the air, before Gado can extend his hair to keep his hold on him. Free, Zayn ascends above Gado and starts free falling down, in the Spirit Trinity position, charging Kai into his right fist. At that moment, Gado knew there were 3 options he can choose from the moment he sees Zayn's Spirit Trinity. Ether dodge and let Zayn land so he can perform a Spirit Blast, attack Zayn in the air with his hair, who will use the Spirit Sword to cut it up, leaving Gado defenseless, or create a shield to block Zayn's Spirit Punch. Deciding to take the low-risk plan, Gado creates a wall with his hair between him and Zayn. However, Gado's flaw is thinking that Zayn is too straightforward as Zayn pierced through the shield with his Spirit Sword. The blade misses Gado, which Zayn does on purpose in order to not get disqualified for killing. But Zayn butts open the shield, allowing him to retrace the Spirit Sword to punch Gado in the stomach again with a Spirit Punch. While low level, the remaining power plus the boost from the first fist is enough to majorly injure Gado, who retained the damage from Zayn's earlier attacks. Instead of being pushed back from the blow, Gado manages to attach his hair to the ground as he swings his head towards Zayn, head-butting him. Zayn doesn't back down, as he and Gado exchange blows against each other. Fist to fist, kicks to kicks, and everything in between. Gado knew that Zayn is aiming to defeat him by focusing on his torso to further weaken him, resulting him focusing more on Zayn's attack to the torso. Little does he know, Zayn's been planning on this the moment he noticed that himself has been aiming towards the torso as he sneaks blows to the joints of Gado. At this time, most of the fights for this round have already ended. The match that everybody is watching is Gado's and Zayn's fight. The crowd is split in half between these two as bets are being made, with Gado being the favorite, but Zayn isn't far behind as his last 2 huge moves sway the people watching. Reed looks closely as he can see a smile on Zayn's face, and not a friendly one, but joyful, as if he doesn't want this to end. He's seen the same smile on Scally's face earlier as he remembers Kalra saying the Saiyan race is warrior race, finding joy in fighting. Thought Reed as he wonders something about the Saiyan race. Do all Saiyans have this in common? Meanwhile, Kalra looks at Gado disapprovingly as she sees that he's being pushed back this time. Gado, you always let your guard down against people weaker than you. Thought Kalra, is this a problem that Gado has since she met him? Years ago, Gah, yells someone as a young man with green hair he crashes through a door. Inside a large mothership, leading 4 other ships, a young Gado is being pushed back by a little girl, a young Kalra. Although she looks like a little girl, in reality she's about a teenager around this time as her Saiyan blood keeps her from looking like a teenager from Earth at this time. A bunch of men watches in shock as their prodigy is being pushed back by this girl they've picked up in a planet under dictatorship, ruled by someone called the Red King. They planned on selling her to sex slavery, but the plan changed the moment the captain sees her power. Now, Kalra closes her eyes, but opens them to continue watching this fight. Even though Gado can be arrogant than her at times, he made him stubborn, and that stubbornness can help him keep fighting as Kalra senses his power rising. She smirks, knowing that he'll still might win with that resolve to never lose. After hitting Gado with an eye-expecting combo using high kicks as feints at high speed, Zayn punches Gado in the head 4 times, thinking that this was the end as he stuns Gado. With the little time he has, charges for another spirit punch, as goes for the finish with a punch the head, only for Gado to move his head and catching Zayn's arm. Zayn's eyes widen as Gado catches his arm by his wrist, and that Gado still not giving up. Gado, while holding Zayn's right arm, powerfully elbows Zayn's arm as intense pain and a sound came from Zayn's right arm. "Rah!" screams Zayn as Gado breaks his right arm. Zayn backs away, holding his broken right arm as the first fist wears off. Gado attacks with his green hair as it heads straight at Zayn, who out of desperation, fires a Kai blast at Gado. Gado sees this coming and prepares to dodge, only for his injuries and abdomen to interfere. Gado flinches from the pain, as he slows down long enough for Zayn's Kai blast to hit him. Gado's hair attack stops as Zayn sees the opportunity to continue his assault, even without the first fist or his right arm, which he puts inside his shirt to keep it from bouncing around the outside. Gado is slightly fazed by Zayn's attack, but loses concentration before seeing Zayn coming right at him off the ground. Gado starts charging at him as well but slows down as he sees Zayn stopping and closing his eyes. He's going to do something. Should I wait and see or attack before he can do anything? Thought a caution Gado, who thought of most possibilities on what Zayn might do. Suddenly, Zayn crouches down and puts his left fist on the ground. At that moment, Gato slows down, thinking what's Zane doing, then had an image of what he could be doing. That move, where his skin turned redder, is attempting it like that because his arm is broken. Wonders Gato as starts to slow down. At that time, Gato had two paths he could choose from. He could either stop and back away, either letting Zane time to do whatever he's doing or foil Zane's plan. On the other hand, he could either continue to attack and either fall for a trap or stopping Zane's attempts. If he really is going to do that move, then I have to defeat him before, thought Gato as he made his decision as he speeds up towards Zane, as he sends his hardened strands of long green hair towards Zane. Gato sees Zane's left fist that's on the ground glowing, just like before when he uses his spirit techniques. Gato felt relief in his heart as he made the right choice because Zane shouldn't enough time to completely charge it in time. Meanwhile, watching from the stands is Gim as watches Thai match unfold. Approaching him is Scally who mostly have his eyes on the match, using his Kai sense to keep him from bumping into others. Mr. Gim, did you teach him the displacement technique? Asks Scally, who feels something wrong with the technique. As the strands of hair reaches Zane, Gim answers to his previous student, barely. Gato could have ended this if he decided hit Zane in different directions, instead of hitting him in one spot, but he wanted to focus his strands into a single spot to finish Zane off. He did the latter believing that even if Zane did use the spirit sword to cut up the hair, Zane couldn't defend himself against a Gato head-on without killing him with the sword. He could have won if Zane wasn't preparing for the aura displacement technique. Last night, Zane watches as a high-speed punch coming from at him. His face is bloody, he looks weakened, and his body is shaking, but still, Zane's prepare his aura for the incoming attack. In the end, Zane's manages to deflect the punch from Gim, who pulls his fist back the moment he felt like he was being pushed back. Zane smiles for a moment, but collapses to the ground as Gim catches him. After all this time, he could only deflect one punch and a punch he has to see coming. Thought Gim on Zane's progress. In the end, Zane couldn't master aura displacement in a night. The only way he can use the technique if he has enough time and if the physical attack is smaller than 12 inches. Gim can only hope that his opponents help him get stronger before facing a veteran of Battleground. Now, Gato's attack gets deflected by the aura displacement technique as Gato looks on in shock. Zane gets up, with his left hand glowing as he quickly rushes at Gato, so he doesn't have enough time to counter. Gato knew his hair wouldn't come back to him in time, meaning he has nailed the final blow with his body before Zane as he rushes towards Zane. They both their fists back, knowing that they have to end this now before the other can counterattack. Gato don't know how many techniques Zane has and can't risk not treating his injury to his torso by backing away to prolong the fight. Zane, on the other hand, is doing this because it's his last attempt to win. Both of their fists cross the other as they aim for the other's head. For a moment, it seems that Gato might win due to having the longer reach, but suddenly, the injury to his torso stops him. Gato's motor skills slows down as Zane's spirit punch reaches him. The crowd can feel the impact upon Gato, as the moment the attack connects, there was a bright light shining across before it fades the moment Gato is sent flying to the wall separating the other competitors, as Gato's body slides down the wall. The pod quickly came in analysis Gato as it confirms his state as red. Zane sits down on the ground as he pulls out his broken right arm out of his shirt as the crowd roars in his victory. While a part of him is happy he won, another part knew that if things went a little different, Gato could have won. Zane is thankful that Gato couldn't use her sense Kai, otherwise Zane should have lost a while ago. Gim and Kalra came to that conclusion as well due to Gato surpassing Zane in every level, but Zane didn't give up and use every advantage he had on Gato like techniques and Kai. But the one thing that Zane the advantage is how he affected Gato's mental capabilities by switching his tactics up to confuse Gato, keeping him second guessing. Gim thought of the other fortunate that led to Zane's victory, that all of Gato's attacks were physical. 3 others were watching the match as well. It was the group of 3 that entered the battle royal with Kalra. They watch away from the other people in the stands before the man in the white cloak approaches them. It's time. I have a ship ready to take you to Earth. I have agents inside to make sure your entree is as discreet as possible, says the man in white as the 3 turns to him. We'll do what you say in exchange for what we want, said the male with white hair, remember that. Of course, you saw it too when you were whole once. The end, says the man in white as he gives a piece of paper to the girl with blonde hair. Here are instructions for when the time comes to give me the gem. You even have a date and time written, says the blonde, fairly impressed. You have about 6 months for the plan to happen, so in the meantime, explore Earth a little bit. It has been a long time since you've been there, Keen, said the man in white with a smile as he looks at the 2, Or rather, the two pieces of Keen of Battleground, or Edel of Earth. Medical room, battleground. Zane's eyes awakened to a bright light above as he felt a tingling sensation around his body. It felt like there are hundreds of needles around his body as he sees Gim beside him. He can tell from his position that he was on a bed as Gim presses Zane's center pressure point as the needles explodes out of his body onto the roof. A nurse shows up to his view as she scolds Gim as he turns to see Reed Richards, who leaves a tablet on a table and walks up to Zane. "That was incredible," says an astonished Reed as he moves his head and inspects Zane's body. "Do you feel anything strange, Dragon?" "Nope, I just feel fine," answers Zane as he feels his entire body just went through a gentle waterfall. "Gim's healing treatment really is incredible. Don't even think about abusing the treatment I'm giving you. I can only do this at least 3 times a day before I'm spent." "How long was I out?" asks Zane as Reed looks at the time on his tablet. "About 24 minutes, 50 seconds and 20 milliseconds, answers Reed as Zane gets out of bed and grips his hand. "I feel it. I got more stronger than before," thought Zane as he wants to go out and power up. "My body feels lighter, but my bones." Zane taps his arm and feels his bones more harder along with his muscles being more denser. He feels like he can take on an enraged rhino without Kai and maybe even beat Godo if they fight on an equal footing. But something hits Zane, and that was Kalra. While he did get stronger, both during and after his fight with Godo, he feels like his newfound strength is nothing compared to the possible strength of Kalra's, judging from the pressure she's admitting. Another time, years ago, he first met him and her after arriving to Battleground. He's been sneaking aboard spaceships from planet to planet until one took him to Battleground. There, he decided to make this place his home due to acting this place seems until he ended up migrating to the lower levels due to the amount of police activities in the higher ones. While still a child, he's strong and resourceful enough to take care of himself. He was proud of himself for his strong right punches which were powerful enough to injure an adult. That's he met her by a random chance in which after, he learned just how small he was when that boy showed up in his life. Waiting room, battleground. The second to last set of matches are underway, as the final set competitors are in the waiting room. Among them is Jarek, who's wearing a dark blue body armor and metal gauntlets as he sits on a chair, waiting for his chance to fight. He watches his opponent, who's a 7-foot red-skinned humanoid with 6 arms, who's been making a reputation in the lower levels of the city. Down there, it is said that in terms in power and strength, he may be a match for even Scally. But Jarek knew that it's been a long time since Scally actually been in the lower levels, meaning that nobody down there knows Scally's current strength, except him during their meeting in the bar and his fight with Kalra. He also eyes another potential winner, a gray-skinned fighting priest from a long-dead religion named Hoodoo. Some say that a single kick from him is the equivalent of a beam from one of the giant Kree warships. Jarek starts to wonder if even Scally could be a match from him. He looks at the human with curly hair whose name is Girad and the man he's standing in front of, like a bodyguard, the man in white. The name the man in white registered with is King. Jarek doesn't why he would register such a name, but it doesn't concern him. What matters is the face Scally made when he saw him a couple of hours before when they were getting their numbers. The face of not excitement like when he fought Kalra, but as if he looked like he realized how big the world is. He never seen Scally use such an expression before. He known Scally for a long time as children and he feels like Scally hasn't changed much. He's still the same fighting manic and impulsive monkey as he's always was, but the reason why he never showed that expression is probably because he felt Kalra's level is something he could reach. But maybe this guy is beyond even Scally's potential. However, even if Jarek known Scally since childhood, Scally's still a mystery to Jarek after all these years. Maybe all these Saiyans are mysterious, one way or another, thought Jarek as he gets up as the officials came out the door, ready to start the next set of matches. Coliseum stands. Leaning on one of the rails on the top stands is Zane, who just left the room he was resting in to watch the rest of the fights. From what he was told, by the time the day ends, they'll be going home and probably arrive there by midnight. Zane's mother said that she'll arrive by 3 a.m. or around that time, meaning he'll be clear if he manages to get home of time. Then it just hit Zane that he didn't even do his homework for the weekend, meaning he has to do it overnight. As Zane sighs in frustration as he was so excited about the trip here, he didn't even begin or even take his homework with him. For some reason, he thought about why is he here. The main reason why he and the Fantastic Four are here to look for the other Saiyans, but they ended up fighting in a tournament. While the thing is gamed for it, Mrs. Richards doesn't seem like she's enjoying herself. Johnny Storm is too busy finding ways to enjoy himself and Reed is busy doing something else as far as Zane knows. Am I a little selfish for wanting things to go this way? thought Zane as he remembered how much trouble he caused as a child, to the point where he was sent to dance class as a punishment, and was harassed by kids he went to school with. Reed went with his family somewhere outside the Coliseum, leaving Zane alone with these thoughts, as he watches the final competitors for the second round of fights entering the arena, as he thought about how much he has changed since he met Iron Fist. Or maybe he's going back to the way he was before he met Jack and Jessica. He doesn't know. He sees Jarek coming out the door and scans his power. He's strong, but Zane feels like that he may have the advantage in power if it weren't for Zane's power boost before. Next it was Hoodoo, whose pressure and power can be felt around the arena. Zane watches in amazement as next to Kalra, he's probably one of the strongest fighters here. If this was a battle royal, he would most likely win. But then again, Zane won his even though he managed to only take out the third strongest fighter of that block. That's when he came in. King walks out of the door as Zane notices him. At first, he really doesn't feel anything special from King. His power is a match for most of the people here, but not Hoodoo's level, but Zane keeps watching him. The aura around him feels familiar, but he doesn't know where. King stops before entering his space and stares at Zane's direction. Zane pauses as notices King's stare, but King stops as he proceeds to his space. Earlier, when you were out doing who knows what with Gim, he emitted power that I never thought existed. A voice behind Zane says, startling Zane. He didn't sense him coming as he lowered his energy to its minimum. But due to how easily distracted Zane was, he didn't even bother to sense his surroundings. He turns to find Scally of all people behind him. Zane looks in the eyes, the same ebony eyes belonging to him and Kalra. There's also his hair, which is the same color as him and Kalra. Almost immediately, Zane knew that the man he is talking to is a Saiyan. How it going? Asks Scally in a nonchalant way. You are, says Zane as Scally realizes that Zane might realize that Scally is also a Saiyan. My name is Scally, the top contender for this tournament. Boosted Scally in a proud manner, before seeing Zane's blank face and remembers why he came here. And I'm a Saiyan like you. I can see that, bluntly says Zane as Scally scans Zane and looks at his lower torso. Where is your tail? Asks Scally as Zane looks at him with a confused manner. Tail? Wonders Zane as he looks at his behind. Don't have one. Are we supposed to have one? Yes, I think, hesitantly answers Scally, meaning he doesn't know as well. You think? Repeats Zane, being a little skeptic. I just threw out yesterday I might be a Saiyan, says Scally, putting emphasis on might. I might just found out this morning, informs Zane, putting emphasis on his own might. Don't feel bad. If you found out from the same lady I got it from, it's understandable. Girl like us, redcoat, high power, start pointing out Scally before Zane finishes with his own spin. A bit of a bitch. Yeah, I met her, informs Zane as Scally looks at him with confusion. Bitch? Scally wonders about the unknown word. It means a girl that bit of a, you know what, forget it, Zane says, trying to stop where the conversation is heading at this rate. More importantly, if you just found out, does that mean you don't remember anything as a Saiyan? To be honest, starts Scally before pausing. I really don't know. I see. Me too, informs Zane as the answers the two were looking for won't come from other. Well, this is a bit frustrating, complains Scally, looking at the sky before looking back at Zane. I'm Scally. I'm Draw, Zane starts to say, before pausing for a bit and reintroduce himself. My real name is Zane. Zane Dalton. Zane Dalton. Then why do you call yourself Dragon? Asks Scally as Zane feels embarrassed a bit. In my head it sounded cool and the guy who taught me how to fight has dragons on his outfit, so I decided to let it be a bit of a tribute, answers Zane, feeling a bit corny about his decision. Don't get it, says Scally. Follow loud cheers as the end of the first round begins. Let the final bracket begin, shouts Delon to her microphone as Scally glances to King. The moment Scally even turns to the King's side of the arena, he felt King's power rising in an instant from Scally's point of view. Scally couldn't even tell how fast it raised to, but it was even above Kalra's. King's power goes back its minimum before a strong rush of wind came to Zane and Scally. Zane didn't even notice that King's power even rises, as it was so fast, his level of Kai sense couldn't even pick it up. But as soon as the wind came and passed, he turns to the arena, where he sees a cloud of dust coming out an inner corner of the divider. He senses somebody with a low power on a crater on the wall. Scally feels the low power and finds out it was Hoodoo before figuring out that Hoodoo was sent through the divider into the wall. He turns to King, who just standing there, as Scally looks at the monitor above him and looks like it's gone dark. He spots a crowd gather around something as leans closer and sees a robot with a camera attached to it, the ones that are used to capture the fights by flying around the ring. Emergency assistance came running to Hoodoo as he peels off the wall as Zane sees that his armor is pierced through. To the stomach, Hoodoo looks like he's bleeding through his torso. The crowd is in awe as they never seen the divider broken through like that. While once a wall was knocked over, it was mostly because the fighters at the time were giants and fought each other before crashing through the wall to the fight beside them. But it's been the first time in more than a century that someone below 10 feet sends someone through the walls. A replay is being shown on the screen above the area of King's one-sided fight, as it shows the two standing face to face to each other like everybody else. But suddenly, King disappears, followed by a gust of wind knocking the camera down. Scally can't even see what happened, but he sees a cone made from the air before the camera was knocked down, meaning that King has not only had the speed that even Scally can't follow, but his initial speed that surpasses the speed of sound. The medics makes a O with his hand before making a horizontal slash as Delon nods. Fighter Hoodoo hasn't died, meaning King has advanced to the next round, explains Delon. Zane remembers the rules of the main tournament from Gim. Since the Battleground tournament has a no-killing rule, anybody who breaks that rule is disqualified from the tournament, intentional or not. But from what Zane can sense, Hoodoo was next to either the edge of death or just the edge of death. Coliseum Arena. Even the competitors inside the arena stop after sensing the ground shaking as they stare at the screen watching what happened. Jarek realizes that they are still fighting as he quickly lands a heavy hit to the stomach of his opponent. Unfortunately, his opponent recovers from that hit and starts rushing with fast punches with his 6 arms as Jarek barely dodges them. Jarek's opponent, an alien named Wal, sneaks in a punch to Jarek's gut as Jarek is sent roll though the ground. Another time, when the boy met the women tried to take him into her home. The boy refused, believing that he could take care of himself and doesn't want to be a burden. After leaving the women, he then meets the other boy, a black hair, black eyes boy who picked a fight with homeless boy. The homeless boy, to this day, didn't know why the other boy started a fight with him, but he accepted as the boys fought back and forth with each other. In the end, the black-haired boy won as he carries the homeless boy to his home. Coliseum Arena. Wal feels like he's won this fight after that blow, as Jarek's last hit was his best one yet, and Wal somehow recovered from that enough to counterattack. Wal walks up a down Jarek, who isn't unconscious, and tries to kick Wal from the ground. Wal, however, lets Jarek hits him as the attack proved to be too weak, allowing Wal to use all 6 of his arms to grab Jarek's arm and start spinning Jarek around before throwing him to the ground. The impact created a small crater as Wal keeps slamming Jarek over and over on the same crater before tossing him to the air. As Jarek comes back to Wal, his eyes starting to look its light, he felt a jolt of his electricity waking him up as an electric shock came out of arms and shock Wal in his face. They were from Jarek's cybernetics as he recovers and lands on the floor like a cat. His arms and torso start sparking as his eyes glow light blue. Delon looks worryingly at Jarek, concerned on what just happened to him. As she sees the metal on his arms and torso, she understands what he did. She's seen it over and over again, from people who lost an arm, leg, or both from battles or wars in their past. She hates cybernetics, but understands why people do it if they don't have a choice. But Jarek had a choice. Jarek rushes at Wal, looking like he was as fast as lightning due to surge of electricity coming out of him. But Scally could see his movements. Even with the increased speed, Scally can still see Jarek's movements. Wal can barely keep up with Jarek, as Wal was the type who uses his offense and defense the most rather than his speed. While Jarek's punches remain the same, they are starting to stun due to the constant attack from Jarek. That's when Jarek starts kicking the legs, creating enough hits to knock Wal off balance and fell to his knees. Like gust of wind to the face, Jarek rapidly punches Wal to the face several times over before finishing it off with a heel kick to the top of the head. Wal underestimated Jarek, just like Gato did with Zane. And just like Zane, Jarek hurried to defeat Wal before he can adjust to his newfound power. The power that Jarek's cybernetics wore off as the electricity coming out of him stops and his eyes return to normal. He feels tried, but able to walk away as Delon announces his victory. Scally watches as Jarek walks to the gates, and sees Jarek stopping and turns to the crowd, scanning the area for something or someone. Their eyes met and Jarek gives Scally a determined glare as Zane watches this encounter. I guess they know each other, though Zane, making the best assumption he could. Jarek, thought Scally, feeling the guilt of why Jarek resents him so much. It happened years ago, when Gim first trained Scally to his first Battleground tournament. At the time, Scally was following his ambitions and what he wanted to, as he was cheered by everybody. But he ended up abandoning somebody to enter, somebody he and Jarek hold dear. In the eyes of Jarek, Scally is the most selfish person in the universe and Scally feels like he deserves it. Hey, are you okay? Asks Zane as Scally came back from his inner conciseness. It's nothing, assures Scally as he smiles a bit to fool Zane. There were a few seconds as neither Zane or Scally don't know what to say to each other now. They don't know much of the other person or what they like. The only thing Scally knows about Zane is that he's from Earth and a Saiyan. That when he remembered the superheroes from Earth and the rumors that some of them go by codename. I have a question, says Scally. What is it? Asks Zane. Are you one of those heroes from Earth? Questions Scally as Zane didn't expect that people in space know much about superheroes. Kind of, answers Zane, who's asking himself if he really is seeing as he joined this tournament for a not so noble reason. Are they really strong as the rumors say they are? That team from Earth, the Avengers, wonders Scally as Zane thought a bit long on the topic. Well, I only know like 2 of them, answers Zane. On Thor and Captain America, Thor really strong, but Cap looks more like the leader type. But on Earth, they are called the mightiest heroes and people tend to rely on them when something bad happens. Like what recently? Asks Scally, curious on what kind of events that hold in another world. Well, years ago this guy called Kang attacked the entire world and managed to conquer the Earth, explains Zane, as Scally looks a little surprised that such a seemingly unconquerable was in fact conquered. It was really bad. The place where I live was under martial law from the guys that invaded. Somehow, the Avengers stopped them after a few days. That's pretty incredible. I doubt something like that will happen in Battleground, says Scally as Zane looks at him at that statement of his home. Why? Wonders Zane. Outside of the tournament, nothing ever happens. During the 1-year timeout of the tournament, we can go out the city, but nobody ever tries to go far due to how powerful the monsters are. Informs Scally on the situation in Battleground and beyond the city. The rich here are exiled nobles from other planets, who end up stomping on those who are less rich. The lower levels are full of crime and there's corruption within the government. You sound just like my mom, says Zane as Scally eyebrow flinches a bit from the word mom. She used to be a flower child or a hippie during a time in Earth where there was chaos or revolution depending on whose side you were on. Her father died and her mother wasn't financially or emotionally able to couldn't take care of my mom when she was a kid. My mom's sister offered to take care of my mom until my grandma is back on her feet. Zane remembered the story from his mother. When Amy was 12, her father died in an on-the-job accident. There was insurance fraud during the case against the company, resulting in Amy's mother not getting anything for the death of her husband. She looking for a job, but wasn't able to hold one due to her depression. They ended losing the house Amy grew up in and washed up on the streets. One day, Amy's sister, Mary, who ran away from home to live in San Francisco, contacted her and offered to take care of Amy until their mother is back on her feet. Her mother agreed, believing that Mary is more able to take care of Amy than her current self and the fact that her other oldest child, Andrew, was in college, struggling to support him after the death of her husband. Since then, for 5 years, Amy lived in San Francisco, from the late 60s to the early 70s until her mother got back on her feet. Afterwards, Amy ended up going to college, hoping she would become a lawyer, but ended up getting a degree in business. Since then, due to her experiences with the tragedies with her family and the influence around her growing up as a teenager, Amy became an interesting woman. While working in a banking company, she distrusts it in many big companies and always look for a way to help others without being caught. She has a sharp tongue, but knows when to use it. She teaches Zane about things about government, corporations, and being open-minded. To this day, Zane knows more about government than most would after about half a year in a classroom. I have a question, asks Scally. What is it? Says Zane as he realizes that he used a couple of words that are more or less Earth-related. What does financially means? Wonders Scally as Zane computes what Scally said and had a blank expression on his face. There might be another word for it here, thought Zane as he tries to explain to Scally next what the word means. It means how you manage or spend your money, or cash ... or currency, or whatever you understand from my words. Oh, so that what financially means, said Scally as he learned a new word. How did you know that? School, answers Zane, a little dumbfounded, or a place of learning if there is a different word for it here. We use school and I can't believe you've been to school. I never been there, informs Scally. Why? Asks Zane. I was raised in the lower levels of Battleground in an orphanage and only a few there actually been to school. We just learn what we need to survive by the people around us, answers Scally as Zane nods as he understood what he meant. Scally thought about section 128 and the memories he had there. Years ago, he made rumors as a talented child with an undefeated streak against adults, which lead to being trained by Gim, which allowed him to participate in his first Battleground. He thought about that day, the good and the bad from that day. Another time, the homeless boy wakes on a bed, with the lady from earlier sitting next to him. She introduces herself as Rami, the orphanage owner and mother. Then somebody appears next to her, the black hair boy from before. He said the reason he knocked the homeless boy out was because he wanted to bring him here and show him how fun it was. The black-hair boy extends his hand and tells the homeless boy his name, Scally. The homeless reluctantly accepts the hand and introduces himself as Jarek. Coliseum stands. With the last fight now complete, I have an announcement to make, announces Delon after the final fight was completed. Zane just sat there, watching the rest of the final round by himself as he is curious on Delon's announcement. By a unanimous decision by the Battleground Council, the length between the first and second half of the tournament is shortened to half a year, announces Delon as the crowd mumbles to themselves on the change from tradition. This is due to certain sensitive events that took place before the tournament which will be announced soon. Until then, we shall continue with the tournament. While Zane is a little surprised by the announcement, he figures that this is better. It's during summer vacation and Zane could say that he's at Jack's house. He's a little grateful of the sudden turn of events. The screen shows the remaining 64 competitors with the amount of rounds turning into 4 with 8 matches per each. Nothing has changed except for the amount of rounds. Just like the round before, the computer will randomize to pick who faces who, announces Delon as the selections for the first round of the best 64 begins. The very first person it picks to start the first round was Zane. This surprised Zane, but feels relief as he could fight and train some more after his fight. While he's interested in fighting somebody new, he feels he might do better with somebody he just watched. In either case, Zane feels excitement in his veins as they announced who will he be facing. Moments before the computer started randomizing, Jarek heads straight to the stands after finishing his match, where he watches to see who's fighting who. When he spots Scally as one of the faces as he glares at the picture of his face on the screen. He then made a promise in his heart that no matter who gets in his way, he'll show Scally about the way he lives is wrong. He wants to beat Scally and make him apologies in Rami's grave for not being there the day she died. The computer then picked Zane as the first competitor in the first round. Jarek recognizes him as the person next to Scally and instantly guesses he's a Saiyan. That's when the second competitor was chosen. Both Zane and Jarek look shocked as the person Zane is facing next is Jarek. Years ago, Battleground. Years start going by in the orphanage since the young Kree Jarek joined. The caretaker, Rami, was once a resident of the planet which was soon conquered by the Kree Empire when she was young. Her parents attempted to escape and succeeded, only to have a forced landing in Battleground due to their ship malfunctioning. Upon landing, they couldn't fix their ship, resulting in them having to live in Battleground until they can. After a couple of years, Rami's family made such a good living that they decided to permanently reside in Battleground. However, her parents would fall ill to a fatal disease exclusive to their race. Before the invasion, it was on its way to being contaminated before the Kree came and ruined that. Since no other race could be infected, the Kree were less sensitive to the problem. Rami would take the money her parents earned to take care of herself and worked in a poor orphanage, where she would buy it and renovate it. She's been the caretaker for years, during which she became friends with Miguel, who was an upcoming agent for the Battleground tournament. He and his daughter lived in Section 128 for years before Miguel started moving up, where his daughter, Delon, became friends with the kids in the orphanage. She was beloved by most in the section, to the point where even thugs would be respectful to her. She doesn't have much of an education due to her working most of her life, but tries to teach the children as much as she can. She looked like a human with blonde hair and green eyes, but her anatomy is alien. During last decades as the caretaker, she brought in Scally, who would become her favorite yet troublemaking child. Now, Coliseum stands. The first set of matches for the first 8 participants of the top 64 has been decided. With only 32 fights left, there will be a total of only 4 sets of matches for the regular tournament. Among those in the first set is Scally, Zane, and Jarek. The latter of the two will be fighting each other. When Zane saw this, he knew he could win. From what he saw, he knew he was too fast for Jarek, and even Jarek's new shown power won't be much of a problem for Zane. Although if Jarek somehow electrocutes Zane, then he won't be happy getting shocked 2 days in a row. Zane heads to the waiting room, where he spots Jarek ahead of him. They are about a couple of feet away from each other, but Zane didn't want himself to be noticed by him now. It will be too awkward for Zane if he and Jarek confront or even look at each other at this time. So when Jarek entered the waiting room first, Zane just stood by the side of the door, waiting until a couple of minutes have passed. A couple of fighters who are in the first set walk into the waiting room, as their eyes usually glance at Zane, wonder what he's doing before entering the room. Zane just lifts his head up as a greeting, before regretting waiting by the door, looking shady. He felt like this was enough time to enter before somebody taps him on the shoulder. Zane turns to see Scally, the other Saiyan. "You're Jarek's opponent, right?" asks Scally, who sounds like he's making a rhetorical question. Yes, I am," answers Zane, who kind of glad that he now has an excuse to not entering the room immediately, especially with a couple of people inside saw him looking suspicious by the door. "He's actually an old friend of mine when I was a kid," comments Scally. "I see," says Zane, who's trying to give as much attention to Scally's story. "He looked angry at you for some reason. I saw him looking at you, just glaring." Scally didn't say anything for a second, before answering melancholy, "Let's just say I was selfish in the past and regretted something that Jarek will never forgive me for." Zane didn't want to press on it. It has nothing to do with him and he doesn't know how to solve personal problems. He either ignore it or try to pass by them. And not that he doesn't care, but he's afraid if things might get worse if he does something. While school is a problem, there's also the fact that one of these days, his mother will find out about him. He getting lucky just because his mother been leaving work late these days, but he feels that she'll find out later this month at this rate. Just like with Captain America the first time after the fall formal and Jack during Titanium's man kidnapping. Years ago, Battleground. This Scally kid sounds unbeatable. I heard he's really young, but won a couple of fights in the streets against some dangerous people. They say he defeated some punk in one hit. This boy sounds like a genius. One day, a young Jarek heard these words while wandering in the streets of Section 128. He was about 14 years old at this point, when Scally, who was 13, went on to take part in unofficial fights in the streets of the lower sections. The opponents in them were dangerous and would cheat against opponents who fights by the rules. Scally went on to defeat them anyway, sometimes easily, sometimes not. Since then, the secret fights he'd been hiding from Rami increased, with him defeating opponent after opponent, some with a reputation in the Battleground tournament. It was before long until talk reaches the ears of those interested in his untrained talent. One day, Scally's next fight would be against a fallen semi-finalist, whose body was destroyed by various substance over the years. While his body is severely weakened compared to his prime, his skills, although far from refined, are still good enough to fight to compete in a fight. It was a good, long fight, but Scally would lose, with his opponent standing above him. With signs of bruises on him and a cut on the side of his head, Scally tried to come up with an excuse not to come home along with Jarek. Then, a man approached him to heal his injuries. The former Battleground champion, Gim. Coliseum. It about the middle of the day in Earth as the first set of the second rounds are ready to start. The lawn stands circle with guard railings hovering above the arena. On all 8 screens, it shows who's fighting who on what side of the arena. On the far upper left corner is Zane and Jarek, while below them is Scally and his opponent. The only person who's on the stands from Earth is Johnny Storm, who's wondering where everybody in his family went. Reed went somewhere with Miguel and Sue chased after him, while Ben is waiting for his match which is happening in the next set. He wonders if he should have entered as well, due to doing nothing but watching, but decides that he like his face too much to see it damaged for something like this. The competitors are ready. With that, let the first of the second round fighters appear, announces Delon as the giant gate on the bottom opens. The fighters start coming out of the open gate with Zane about the 8th person appearing in front of everybody. Zane glances in front to see Scally walking proudly as the one appearing out first, like he's leading the charge, with a confident smile on his face. Zane senses Jarek behind the group as Zane didn't want to turn to see in order to create a less tension atmosphere. Suddenly, Zane senses Kai as he sees a shadow blurring straight above the group. Zane then realizes it belongs to Scally as he reads Kai. Scally, who looks like he jumped straight from the ground, above the entire Coliseum and starts falling down towards his place, where he uses his Kai to gently land in place. With the sight of an impressed crowd, Scally wears a cocky smile on his face as he feels confident in his victory for this match. Zane just walks to his side normally as he positions himself near the seats. He turns to face Jarek, who was walking slowly to their side, as he's busier glaring at Scally, then wanting to face Zane. Zane feels like Jarek not even taking him seriously for paying more attention to Scally than himself. Zane starts stretching, trying not let it bothers him and take advantage of Jarek's distraction as the countdown starts in 30 seconds. When all fighters got in their place, the 8 walls appear, separating into 8 separate rings for each separate fight. Scally looks at his opponent, who's a bald, purple-skinned man with thin arms and legs. Scally already saw him fight, as his species have extremely high density, meaning he hits hard and can take damage. Scally knows that he needs to use more power than he initially thought he'll use for this part of the tournament. 3.2.1 "Begin," shouts Delon as the countdown ends. Zayn looks at Jarek, who stares right back as they both get into their own fighting stance. Jarek looks like a boxing-like stance while Zayn is more Chinese-based hand-to-hand combat. Zayn charges first, but midway he starts sidesteps to the left and starts gliding around Jarek. He charges Kai into his left hand and starts firing continuous Kai blasts around Jarek. Jarek starts dodging most of them, but Zayn stops and rushes at Jarek and attacks him with a series of strikes. Jarek tries to block as he starts backing away from Zayn, but Zayn breaks Jarek's guard with a straight kick, before landing a powerful punch to Jarek's torso, knocking him back a couple of feet. Jarek lands on his back and starts rolling on the ground from the force of Zayn's punch. In the moment, the people who were watching this match knew that Zayn has total advantage over Jarek with that exchange. It showed that Zayn is strong enough to break Jarek's guard and send him flying, but also showed that Jarek isn't fast enough to dodge the speed of Zayn's quick strikes. Jarek picks himself back up as he keeps his distance away from Zayn. While all of this is happening, Scally had already won his match. Scally's opponent was durable, but can't keep up with Scally's incredible speed, which surpasses Zayn's own. All Scally need is 10 good strikes to a sensitive area at full strength to defeat his opponent. Most of the audience gives him a round of applause for his victory, but it was expected of him to win seeing as he's one of their top fighters and favorite to win. At least 24% of the audience bet on him to make it to the semifinals, while a third are betting on him to win the whole thing. Scally reaps in the praise as he senses the fight happening between Zayn and Jarek. He knows the power difference between the two is large and Jarek can't hope to reach Zayn's speed. He doubts that the boost Jarek's cybernetics gave him during his last fight. Scally can also tell that Jarek isn't fighting to beat Zayn, but to reach Scally himself. This fight was over the moment Jarek couldn't hit Zayn. Jarek, whose eyes glow ice blue with sparks coming out of the cybernetics from his arms and legs, still can't reach Zayn. Not that Jarek is too slow for Zayn as he almost reaches Zayn a couple of times, but Zayn's reflexes only make Jarek's attempts into close calls. They're engaging in close combat, with most of Zayn's strikes reaching Jarek and Jarek not even making a single hit. Zayn isn't even using the most of his strength as he's saving his energy for the next fight. Zayn dodges another strike from Jarek before taking the opportunity to hit a combo of strikes, finishing it with a high knee to the gut. Jarek flies a couple of feet off the ground before Zayn roundhouse kicks him away. Zayn didn't want to badly injure him, so the kick didn't have enough force to really hurt him, but enough to knock him back. Jarek lands and rolls around the floor before his left side hits the wall. Jarek rolls to his back, with a couple of bruises on him, but nothing serious. He knows that Zayn is taking it easy on him. He knows Zayn doesn't want to hurt him because Jarek is weaker than him. To Jarek, it's like Zayn treating him like he's glass. He knows now that if he can't beat Zayn, then defeating Scally is impossible without a miracle. It's frustrating for him knowing this. He doesn't want to accept this or give up now, but victory just doesn't look bleak, but rather looks like a dark pit. His thoughts turn to why he entered this tournament in the first place. He never wanted to fight in the first place even though he's a good street fighter. Years ago he would have liked it, but now he's focusing on his education to create a business in the city. He remembered the instant he asked himself that, to take away Scally's goal to win. Years ago, Gim came to the orphanage after hearing about Scally's talent and potential. Gim wants to create as many heirs as possible to pass down his legendary techniques since he can't with his own son. Some say it's because Gim is afraid to be forgotten. Scally was reluctant at first, wishing to get strong on his own. But Rami gave her blessing to Scally, as she wishes that Gim can help discipline Scally to lower his lust for fighting, as well as she wishes that Scally can accomplish what's he after. With Rami's blessings, Scally felt he has to say agree, and he did. Jarek remembers Scally leaving the orphanage that day. As he slowly walks out the house to become a greater fighter, he would see Scally from time to time when they both had time, but not enough to help stop that distance from separating. Then one day, Rami would be infected with the same illness that took her parents and Scally wasn't there. He was away, entering the tournament for the first time. Jarek can never forgive him for that. While Rami, the woman who took care of them, was dying, he was fighting in this stupid tournament. He wanted to take away the glory of being a winner from Scally, to make him stop fighting. He wanted to take something away from Scally. That is the way he's here. Jarek slowly starts getting up with all his might as Zayn watches on. Zayn never thought he is the dominant one in a fight. He didn't like it and he felt like he could take Jarek down with one shot if he wanted to, but he also didn't want to severely hurt Jarek. In either case, Zayn feels he should make Jarek give up instead of knocking him down. as Jarek gets up, one vertebra at a time, before standing tall, face to face with Zayn at equal height. Zayn is glad that Jarek can get up, but that means that Zayn has mixed feeling continuing to fight as Zayn is too much for Jarek. Zayn can hear some people pulling for Jarek, which makes Zayn feel like a bully because he's fighting somebody weaker than him. Even so, Zayn is still planning on winning, because he doesn't want to lose. Feeling like he should end this now, Zayn quickly takes off straight towards Jarek. Zayn pulls his fist back and gives a power punch to the torso of Jarek. It looked like he landed, but Zayn can feel something strange touching his knuckles, which is shocking him. He looks at Jarek's eyes, which are glowing blue before Jarek touches Zayn's torso, and Zayn felt a dangerous amount of voltage coming into his body before being blown away by that electricity. He tries to recover, almost landing on his feet, but his body starts slowing down as he becomes paralyzed for a brief moment, as he crashes to the ground. He struggles to get up, as he felt his legs and arms shaking. He realizes that the high voltage of electricity just paralyzed him, but at that moment, Jarek came rushing straight at him. Zayn could tell where his fists are aiming towards, but he's too paralyzed for his body to react. Zayn gets hit with a straight punch as he falls to the ground, unable to recover. Can't move. Damn it, thought a frustrated Zayn, face down on the floor while attempting to get up. I don't think I can get up at this rate. Zayn manages to get one leg up, but Jarek decides to take advantage of Zayn's weakened state and kicks him in the stomach. Zayn pops from the ground as Jarek quickly starts twisting Zayn's left arm with his legs on Zayn's chest and neck, trapping him. With Zayn too paralyzed to move, he's just stuck there as a pain sensation is happening to his left arm. Even if he powers up to his full strength, he can't even power out if he can't move his muscles. All it's doing is letting him lower the pain of the pressure happening in his left arm. Didn't know aliens know wrestling moves, thought Zayn as he's barely stopping Jarek from breaking his arm. The paralysis is starting to wear out as the left arm of Zayn is starting to put more resistances each second. Zayn starts to move his legs as he starts to lift himself with them. Jarek tries to put more pressure on his left arm and starts kicking Zayn back to the ground, but Zayn is starting to power out of Jarek's submission. Out of desperation, Jarek unleashes another dangerous amount of voltage on Zayn. Zayn tries to get out and starts pulling his left arm out of Jarek's hands, but Jarek manages to pull one final twist while Zayn tries to pull his arm out from an awkward position. Zayn manages to get his arm out but hears a crack from his left arm. Zayn stands up, with his legs shaking from the electricity Jarek just let out as he feels the paralysis returning. But he holds his left arm with his right and lets out a loud scream of pain. His left arm broke at the last moment before he escaped Jarek's hold and his muscles are starting to feel numb from the voltage. Before Zayn has any chance to try and recover, his eyes see Jarek getting up and tries to grab hold of Zayn again. Zayn stumbles backward to the ground before Jarek can grab him. But before Zayn landed to the ground, he knew he had to get out of Jarek's reach. The moment he landed, he manages to move his right hand and fires a Kai blast to the ground, sending him away from Jarek's reach. Zayn can barely move his body parts with his muscles paralyzed, resulting in him landing on his side and rolling to the wall. Every time he rolls to his left arm, the pain itself numbs his entire left side. Jarek starts chasing him, but before he's even a foot from him, Zayn fires another Kai blast to the ground, escaping again. Zayn finds himself on his back, away from Jarek again, but sees from the corner of his eye Jarek coming at him again. Zayn fires another Kai blast to the ground before Jarek can reach him. But Jarek anticipated that and moves into the direction Zayn flies to. Zayn's body rotates here, his front is facing Jarek, who's right on him. A fast and impactful punch to the torso of Zayn sends him flying to the wall surrounding the arena. As he slides down, he lands on his feet as feeling to his muscles start return. He starts coughing as a result of having the air coming out of his body before throwing up a bit. He wipes the mix of saliva and chunks of food off his mouth as he sees Jarek coming at him. Jarek knew he has finished this before Zayn can recover some more. If he can bring more damage to Zayn's left arm, there might be a stoppage to prevent further maiming. By the time Jarek reaches Zayn, Zayn disappears from Jarek's eyes. Suddenly, an intense force hits Jarek's stomach as saliva pops out of Jarek's open mouth. Jarek's eyes adjust to see Zayn's eyes, intense and angered. Zayn had just kicked Jarek straight to the air with his left foot at full strength. Zayn stopped holding back. With Jarek several feet above Zayn, Zayn just stood with right foot holding his entire body up and his left foot sticking out in the air. Zayn takes his right hand down a couple inches from the ground, makes a fist with his hand muscles tightened, and waits. He looks like he's ready to wind a baseball pitch, but his eyes look nothing like a sportsman, but blind rage. When Jarek falls into a distance he deeds reasonable. Zayn breaths in and lifts the other half of his body off the ground. With his first rising to the air, Zayn lets out his breath and punches Jarek a couple inches above the spot where he kicked Jarek. Jarek coughs a bit of blood from the impact Zayn's punch as some droplets lands on Zayn's right cheek. The moment Zayn felt those drops on his face, he looks to his right cheek and widens his eyes from the blood he spilled as Jarek crashes into the arena wall. Delon watches in horror as her childhood friend is lying inside a wall. She doesn't know what to do as she thought the worst, but she knows he might be okay, but might is a vague word. She yells for the camera to check on Jarek as Scally watches from the waiting room, looking at the monitor with widening eyes. Zayn looks at his fist, which doesn't have any stained blood, meaning he didn't go through Jarek. But there is still internal damage. Zayn reads Jarek's Kai, which is lowered significantly, but not life-threatening. Zayn's face is filled with regret as Johnny Storm watches, looking shocked at what transpired. He wonders what happened to Zayn when he saw the face Zayn made before. Suddenly, the doors to the waiting room open by a powerful force as Zayn senses a powerful source of Kai from there. When Zayn turns to the door, the Kai speeds past him to the hole Jarek is laying in. 6 needles enter Jarek's torso as Kai began to flow to him from someone holding wires. Jarek suddenly wakes up and starts coughing and breathing like a newborn as Zayn turns to see Scally, flying in the air, holding the wires. Jarek looks up to see a shadowy figure eclipsing the sun as the figure lowers to the ground as Jarek watches in disbelief on who it was. When Scally lands to the ground, a wave of pressure hits Zayn as an enraged Scally glares at Zayn, who felt overwhelmed by Scally's power. Battleground Coliseum. Dragon vs. Jarek, winner, Dragon. Those words flashed on the 4 giant screens of the arena as Zayn was victorious in his fight against Jarek. But the entire arena was silent after watching what they just saw. Jarek, while alive, is bloodied and unconscious as the medics start rushing him to the back. Delon wants to go after them, but she was by headset to stay. Meanwhile, Zayn, with droplets of Jarek's blood on his face, filled with regret and self-loathing, can barely look at the enraged Scally as he quietly approaches Zayn. He stops and looks face to face at Zayn, both about the same height with almost similar builds, although Scally is more muscular. "You know," starts talking Scally with contempt in his voice, "I thought you were an okay guy, way different from the other woman. But I can see you Saiyans are really pieces of work. But aren't you a Saiyan too?" questions Zayn, but couldn't really speak up due to shame. "Barely, because I never did that to anybody that didn't deserve it," Scally says as he put his face close to Zayn. "If this weren't a tournament, I'd beat the crap out of you until you never want to fight again." "I didn't mean," shouts Zayn before Scally interrupts. "Didn't mean? Then why is Jarek like that?" shouts Scally, pointing at the direction Jarek was carried off to. Zayn didn't have anything to say, but looked down at his feet, but Scally had more to say. "I hope you do make it past the next round, because I'm not letting anyone get their hands on you until I do." Scally walks to the exit where the medics took Jarek to, as Zayn stares at him until Scally disappears behind the door. Zayn walks back to where he entered from as few shouts from the audience jeered at him. "What was that? What happened to Jarek? You better not have killed him. I knew that man. He didn't deserve that." Zayn looks at his hand and sees bits of blood on his knuckles. He didn't even notice them the first time, yet there it was. He slowly walks to entrance and looks back at the arena where people are still fighting. He thinks to himself, would he still come here if he knew what he was going to do? Zayn figure disappears behind the door. Infirmary. On a hospital bed, hooked up to medical equipment is Jarek, healing yet alive. He's currently asleep as people are standing by his bedside. Scally and Date, the Super Skrull. Date looks at the Jarek's sleeping body and smiles a bit. "For as long as I known you two, you guys can heal up quickly," comments Date. "I remember. We were trying to pick a fight with you. Have you arrived because we heard you were strong?" Jarek here got his butt handed to him. Fondly says Scally, laughs a bit. "Man, he got up quick though. Me, however, was fighting on par with you. For a moment," corrects Date. "By the end, you were so tired. I could have easily flicked you and your undefeated record would have ended before it began." "Don't remember," nonchalantly says Scally. "But I remember Jarek immediately came after you after recovering. If your caretaker hadn't come, you both would have been defeated together," coolly asserts Date as Scally flashes a smirk. "Maybe," says Scally as the suddenly slams open, as Delon appears behind it. "How is he?" worryingly asks Delon as she looks at Jarek's still healing body. "Good," announces Scally. "If that guy's had hit him a bit more harder, who knows how Jarek could have been." "I see," says Delon as she walks to Jarek's bedside. "It's good that nothing more serious happened." "Date, you're fighting that guy next, right?" asks Scally with a more serious tone. Yes, answers Date as he looks at the window by the bed. Dragon of Earth. Those people from that planet have always been troublesome, to the point where my kind had to copy their powers in order to defeat them. I heard there are strong guys there. Maybe I'll go there one day, says Scally as he looks at the same window. There is a moment of silence in the room, as Date knows that that's not all Scally wanted to say. He can feel from Scally's tone that there is more that he wants to say but can't. Date have a feeling on what it is. Anything else you want to say, Scally? Asks Date as he turns to Scally. After about a few seconds of silence, Scally turns back to Date and asks him, sorry, but can you throw the match? Dawn immediately turns her head to Scally, as words she did not expect him to say came out. Scally, who took the tournament the most serious out of all of them, who had such high pride for fighting and competition, was asking someone to throw a fight. She thought he might have said something else, but she can tell from the stern look on Date that Scally really did ask him to throw the fight. I'm guessing you want to avenge Jarek, sighs Date as he turns to the door. You know, those are words I never though you say. I screwed up in the past, with what happened with Rami when she needed me the most. Reflects Scally, who eyes glances at Jarek's resting body. At the very least, I can do this to at least start talking to Jarek again. I really miss this idiot, to be honest. You're just as much as an idiot, if not more, adds Dawn. The point is, continues Scally, annoyed, I know how strong you are, Date, and I can feel how strong that guy is. He can't win. Zod Dragon can't win against you, so at least, let him win so I can fight him. With a faint sigh, Date starts walking towards as reflects on his experiences with Scally, Jarek, and the people of Battleground. He was once a member of Skrull Empire, as a normal foot soldier who once had several encounters with members the Avengers and survived each. That vitality he had ended up getting him called up to do a Super Skrull experiment on behalf of the Empire. But something went wrong, and he ended up with only one hand and limited use of his newfound powers. Abandoned by the Empire as an armless failed Super Skrull, Date travels all over the galaxy and eventually found himself in Battleground. Hearing stories of fights where winners are granted great wealth and prestige on the planet, he made a name for himself all over the city as an experienced warrior with one arm. His reputation caused Scally and Jarek to confront him in order to make names for themselves. While the fight was interrupted, Scally and Jarek would come to him for training, as they wanted to become stronger. Scally would improve and be recruited by Gim, but Jarek would get left behind and did his best to catch up to Scally under Date. After the tragic incident that befell Rami, Date would help Jarek to manage the orphanage in Rami's place. While Date could have moved up the sections along with Scally, the upper sections are filled with former noble Kree, who would look down on Date, so Date felt comfortable in the lower ones with Jarek. You're not the only one who want to avenge him, Scally, states Date as he put his hand on the door handle. For years, I took care of him and the children your caretaker left behind. All of them are worried for him. The ones you grew up with and the ones Jarek took care of. Date turns his head to Scally. One reason why he entered the tournament now is because he felt he was finally around your level. The other is because he felt he can achieve far enough in this fight that he can support the orphanage for 10 more years. Date turns to Jarek and continues, he couldn't, so I'll do it for him. Private room. In a private room on another side of Coliseum from the infirmary, Zane is sitting down on a bed, head down and twirling his fingers around with a bit of anxiousness. In the room with him is Johnny Storm of the Fantastic Four and Gim, a former champion of the tournament, and in charge of Zane's participation in the tournament. Gim, being from Section 99 and met Jarek several times, doesn't know what to say. While he wants to scold Zane about Jarek, he knew how dangerous this tournament can be and technically, he on Zane's side due to Promising Palace, the organizer of Section 99 preliminaries and his old friend, that he would help whoever wins and becomes the Section 99 representative to advance far in the Battleground tournament. Thankfully for him, Johnny Storm breaks the tension in the room. Suo, should we talk about this? Asks Johnny with a hesitant tone. I'm not really good at this kind of stuff, so can I get a hot dog or whatever you guys have here while you do the rest? Do what you want, answers Gim as he regains a bit of composure. What happened back there? I didn't think you were the kind to severely injure another like that. Zane looks up to Gim, with a regretful look on his eyes as Gim continues, while stuff like this happened before and I want to say stuff like this can't be helped and part of the tournament. You were looking like you were trying to kill him. I don't know what happened, Zane quickly said as he turned his head to the window to his right side. I just lost it, questions Gim as he approaches Zane, who turns to him, losing your composure after Jarek started taking advantage. I can see, but your aggression, it was monstrous. Not gonna lie, you scared the holy crap out of me. adds Johnny with an uncomfortable face. I'm surprised you didn't transform and grew horns and black wings. The pressure just got to me and I just didn't want to lose. Then suddenly, my body just started moving on its own. Zane tries to explain, which garners confused looks from Johnny and Gim. I can't explain it. It felt like something inside me just took over. Were you being controlled? Cause it happened quite a lot, says Johnny. It's not mind control. Just gave in to your basic instincts is all. A mysterious voice says from behind. All eyes turn to the person who was standing in front of the open door, the Saiyan pirate, Kalra. Nobody even heard her coming in, let alone the door opening. Zane immediately gets up and prepares himself mentally for a fight. Kalra, however, showed no signs of fighting against them. Saiyans, mispronounced Johnny as Kalra glares at him, but continues her words. We Saiyans are warriors, fighters, and live for violence. We go around conquering planets for two things, money and to satisfy our lust for battle. So, as you can see, says Kalra with a small smirk on her face, we are a very aggressive race of superior beings. What's so superior about messing with people's homes? Questions Johnny as he gives Kalra a dirty look. Don't worry, I'm not in the business of conquering. I'm more in the lines of stealing and killing, adds Kalra as she steps closer to Zane. You know, my first impression of you is that of a failure who lost all ounce of his Saiyan blood, but from what I saw. In a flash, Kalra passed by both Johnny Storm and Gim without them even noticing, and suddenly in Zane's face as she continues her talk. It's alive in you. I'm so glad. The human hasn't pacified you completely. The glorious Saiyan blood still lives in you. Zane tries to back away, surprised by Kalra's speed, but failed to notice behind him as he trips over the bed on the ground on the other side. Johnny and Gim turn and try to grab her, but she disappears out of their sight again. As Zane starts getting back up, Kalra was behind him, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. Although you're still too weak to even keep up with me. However, since you beat one of my men, your level will do. Mockingly comments Kalra with a small laugh at the end. What do you want? Questions Zane as he continues to stare intensely at Kalra. Simple. When I found out my brother's still alive, I was hoping he would join me and show this galaxy. Kalra starts explaining before changing the last part, or rather, this universe. The Saiyans exist. The Saiyans are alive and create a mark of terror upon every single galaxy we can get to. Zane looks at her with a confused look as she reads his expression and explains herself. When I was sent to obliterate the population of this planet of fishmen. My power was closest to our prince at the time, so they figured this would be a good test for me before sending me to stronger planets. However, the planet where I arrived to, Kalra's voice cracks a bit as she quickly turns her head away from Zane, Johnny, and Gim. They couldn't see her face, but Zane felt something as she starts emitting Kai. Her Kai was dark, full of hate and anger, like if Zane walks towards now, he'll feel like he is suffocating in the ocean floor. Zane shifts his head a bit as sees a look of pure intensity of Kalra's eyes, but she eventually regains her composure, turns her head back to Zane and continues. I arrived at a planet of pathetic, ignorant red man who says that Saiyan race doesn't exist. That what I was saying is a lie and that, even if it's true, I must be the last one remaining. Kalra says with a lot of contempt in her tone. I traveled back to where planet Vegeta was supposed to exist, but it wasn't there anymore. It disappears like it never existed. There was slight tone of sadness and suffering from the last sentence Kalra said, but the other three didn't notice as she quickly hid it and continues her talk. I eventually found a pirate crew, whose captain was subpar, so I did them a favor of getting rid of him and installing myself as that ship's captain and made a vow. If the universe forgot about the Saiyans, if the legacy of the Saiyans truly never existed in this universe. Kalra starts walking to Zane, who he puts up a stance and declares with determination, I will forge a new legacy for the Saiyans, where nobody will ever forget who the Saiyans are once I'm done. That's a promise. Zane is taken back by this woman. While the methods she using Zane disagrees with, Zane can feel her iron will from the words she's spoken, her body language, even her eyes. Part of Zane felt for her. He didn't know he was a Saiyan until this week, Scally as well, but Kalra, she knew who she was at the beginning, and just like that, she was alone with nobody knowing what she is and just written her race as make-believe. He wonders, what was her reaction to himself and Scally being alive, living proof that Saiyans really did exist. By myself, continues Kalra as Zane snaps back from his thoughts, I can't do it. Not because of lack of strength, but lack of proof of others like me. How can I prove that others like me exist if I'm only one? So, I came here, looking for rumors of a fighter with incredible strength and a tail, only to find two things, a disappointing little brother who lacks the bloodlust of a Saiyan and a lowly weak warrior who's playing hero. Zane felt a sting in his heart, knowing she was right, he was weak. Compared to the power he felt from Scally and Kalra, he was nowhere near their level. All of Zane's major victories, he didn't do it himself. While he managed to stun the abomination, the Thing was one who did most of damage on him in finishing blow. Zane didn't even leave a scratch prior. He barely beat the arrow guy in the preliminaries, the other two guys took themselves. Common drug dealers, robbers, DC level villains, Zane can easily beat them. But the other guys, there is no way with his current strength. You know Urid, while you are weak, unlike Scally, you have that killer instinct. That true Saiyan blood. That's what I need for my wish to come true, says Kalra as she extends her hand. Come with me and I'll make you strong. Stronger than any low-class Saiyans that has ever been. What are you talking about? Asks Zane with a skeptical look. We Saiyans have no limits. You can injure us to the point of death, we come back stronger. Our bodies are meant to have unlimited power because we have something no other race can become. A proud smirk appears on Kalra's face as she said that, which starts grazing Zane's curiosity about this power. And what is this power? Questions Zane as Kalra leans closer to his ear. The power of a Super Saiyan. She whispers. Super what? Says Zane. It is a legend that been passed over from generation to generation of Saiyans. A power only a few can obtain, although the means to obtain are uncertain. Admits Kalra as she steps away from Zane. So what do you say? Help me show the universe the true power of the Saiyans and you get the power you know you want. Zane looks at her hand and remembered what he thought about heroes and his place in the world. As a kid, he never thought about being a superhero, back when superheroes started emerging and everybody couldn't stop talking about them. He wasn't interested in heroes, he was more into fighting the older kids bothering him. Fighting was always in his blood. Maybe that's why he became a hero. You know, I have to say, I'm glad that you told me about all this. Smiles Zane, which left everyone in the room confused with this action. I was such a troublemaking kid and now I know why. Zane places his hand to back of his head. I also know why I became a hero now. To fight. It's a crappy reason, but I didn't realize why I did it till now. If you think about it, I'm not much of a hero if that's the reason. Zane looks at Kalra, dead in the eyes, and says, but I'd rather be a crappy hero than a Saiyan who goes around wrecking stuff just because they have issues. The room fell silence after that. Kalra's face was at first surprised, her mouth unchanging, but her eyes widened. But slowly, her expression became that of silent fury as the atmosphere felt cold. Zane felt Kalra's power rising and knew that he has no choice but to get ready for a fight. Zane swiftly takes a few steps back, places his right fist into his left hand, and starts charging as Kalra notices and says, you honestly think that will do you any good? Won't know unless I try. Response Zane. Kalra stares at Zane for a second and unsettling smiles. Okay, then let me try something. Kalra spread her arms away from each other. Hit me right in my stomach. Zane, confused, questions her, the hell? What are you talking about? Like I said, hit me. Dead center, calmly said Kalra, pointing at her midriff. Zane doesn't know if she's serious or not, but he knew he must strike now and quickly before she can react. He took one strong step off the ground and was rapidly in front of Kalra. With a fully charged spirit punch, he hits Kalra where her finger is still pointing at. Outside the building, the people who were walking underneath it were thrown into a panic as an explosion came from the third floor. Amid the screams of the startled, eyes were looking at the cloud of dust that came from the explosion. As it starts clearing, the people below can see Kalra, standing on nothing, still pointing at her midriff. Inside the whole of the building, Zane, with his fist out, looks at Kalra's with a confused look on his face as he starts to process what happened. She was unharmed. In fact, there barely even a scratch, just a small red mark that turned back into her normal skin color in no time. His face changes into one of disbelief as he realizes that his most powerful attack didn't do anything at all. You know what? I just realized something. It doesn't matter how much nature of true Saiyan you can be, says Kalra as she dusts herself off. What matters for Saiyan isn't blood, but power, and you are really a disappointing waste of both blood and power. She gathers energy into right hand and points it at Zane. For the sake of the Saiyan's legend, it's best that erase you now, before you further disgrace that blood. Kalra fires her energy attack at Zane, who tries stop it by firing back with his own. But Kalra's attack easily powers through Zane's. As the light from Kalra's attack faces Zane, a wall of fire appears right in front of Zane, as is disperses Kalra's attack. You know what? I agree with the kid. You do have issues, says Johnny, whose body is partially covered in flames. Is there a space therapist around here? Kalra sees the 4 on his chest of his blue uniform and remembers the stories and feats of the Fantastic Four. I heard about you people. You're all supposed to be great defenders of the galaxy. That's us, the world's greatest superheroes, who have in the roster the most interesting and handsomest man in the galaxy," adds Johnny with pride. "I'd go for universe, but I need to be humble sometimes." Kalra flies back a bit and starts charging energy to both of her hands. Zane senses the power she's about to unleash and watches in awe of how much stronger Kalra can get. She is strong, too strong for anybody here, which is what Zane thought. But Zane underestimated the Human Torch. "Flame on," shouts Johnny as his entire body is now covered in fire. He starts charging his own attack in his hands, to which Zane starts backing away from due to how intense the heat is getting. Zane reads Johnny's power and almost trips over himself when he realizes that Johnny is stronger than what he imagined. Kalra fires her energy blast at the group as Johnny responds with his own fire-based blast. Both attacks clash as the force from the collision shatters the windows of the surrounding area. Zane is blinded by the light of their blast, but can see to side Johnny focused, but smirking. Zane tries to see Kalra as he leans to the side and sees her focused as well but starting to struggle. She is powerful, but Johnny, in terms of energy attacks, is stronger. Johnny's attack starts overpowering Kalra's, whose skin starts to feel hotter and hotter as Johnny's fire blast comes closer and closer. That is when Kalra knew that she couldn't win in terms of energy attacks. It enraged her, but she learned a long time ago that there's always somebody stronger in this world. This is just a challenge she'll overcome one day. Suddenly, Johnny's attack blasts straight through Kalra's as Zane, Johnny, and Gim thought that Johnny roasted Kalra. That's when Zane senses her energy near them. He shifts his eyes to in front of Johnny, where Kalra has her fist wind back. She cancelled her own attack so she can slip to the side of the fire blast and quickly sneak in front of them. Zane tried to catch her, but he was too slow as her fist moves towards Johnny's stomach with the intent to kill. That's when her fist stops. Zane watches as Kalra's was about an inch away from ending a life as Johnny and Gim realized that Kalra right in front of them. Kalra, on the other hand, watches wide-eyed as something stopped her attack. It felt like she just punched a solid wall. "Get the hell away from my brother," shouts Susan Richards from behind the group. Something pushes Kalra straight back to the air outside, as she felt an entire ship just collided with her body. She recovers and sees an angered invisible woman, who's dead focused on Kalra. Kalra fires a barrage of energy blasts at her, but Susan raises her hand in front of them as all the attacks immediately disappears upon hitting her force field. Kalra's eyes are full of rage, but before she can make her next move, something pushes her to the ground. An invisible wall is crushing Kalra deep to the ground, who can barely withstand the force of the invisible women's force field. Susan eventually let Kalra go, who can barely stand as she struggles to get off the ground. Kalra slowly rises to the air, glaring deadly at both the siblings, before taking one last glance at Zane before flying away to parts unknown to them. She knew that at her current power, she'll lose. The universe is too big, she needs to be bigger. As Kalra flies back to her crew, full of injuries too shameful for her, she thought to herself, "I need to become it. The legend, that's the only way to accomplish my mission. My dream." Next chapter, Saiyan vs. Skrull. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for parts and videos. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video, till then goodbye.